Good evening, all, and welcome to Midweek Geek with me, the old geek. And at the moment, I am only joined by Major's Musings. So, hello, Major's Musings.
Hello, hello.
Hello, indeed. Though there will be others joining us at some point. Saxius chose the topic, so he better turn up at some point. And
Don't make me bring out my inner Saxius.
And Elfbait has said that he'll be popping in. I don't think Omanal can join us this week. I don't know about anybody else. I mean, the link is there in Discord for anybody who fancies coming in and giving their opinions on whatever nonsense we're talking about. Just say hello to chat. El's posted already. Duralumin is in chat, and Halakar and Grumpy Old Slan, and here's Colstaff as well. So good evening to all of you. There were 10 people in chat before I said hello to everybody, and the greeting appears to have dumped us down to 5. So I don't know what is it. Is it because I've had a bit of a shave? He doesn't look like enough of a nerd anymore without the neck beard. I don't know. Anyhow, I think we'll have our usual sort of warm up, and we're down to 4 in chat now.
Oh wow! It's that damn wizard again. Why is he here? He's hypheneric in disguise.
I think they probably know that we won't talk any sense until Saxius gets here. I mean, that's it's a simple. Oh, Saxius isn't there. They're going to be rubbish. Hello, Biff.
I'll have to bring out my Saxius voice to maybe trick some people back.
You need that Danish accent.
I know Danish is not my strong suit. If he were Scottish, maybe I could do it. But...
You can do a better Scottish accent than I can. I can't do a Scottish accent at all. I think just about my only accent I can do apart from my own one is the French. The Francais. I can speak a very... almost it sounds I've decent my franglais n'est pas bon, n'est pas mal. I've got to practice that though for Saturday, because I'm going to be running Reign of Terror in the Discord on Saturday, and it's going to be filled with bad franglais throughout, as it has to be.
Where's Slan is here. He'll have some words about French accents, I'm sure.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, my greeting scared away the bots. Yeah. Bye, bots. So yes,
talking the French Canadian accent, yeah, out of the side of the mouth, and with the talking without the H's. No,
is that what they do? Is without the ashes?
Some. It's a mix. Like any dialect, there are variations. Yeah.
I don't know.
My father and grandmother, being from Belgium, had less than favorable opinions of French Canadians.
Oh. Oh well.
Specifically, Canadian French. You know, not the people necessarily, but the twang of the accent.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's certain accents. It's not wrong to dislike an accent. I mean, I can't stand the London accent. I think it's all right, mate. I can't be doing the London accent at all. I love the Scottish accent. I love the Irish. I like a South Wales accent. I think that's very nice. North Wales can be very harsh. The Yorkshire accent is great. I'm not a fan of a broad Mancunian accent or a Liverpudlian accent. Sorry to any Scousers or Manx. It might be watching. I think I quite like the ooh sort of country bumpkin accent of various parts of the British Isles. The Newcastle accent I think is fantastic as well. The Geordie. But my local accent, the Birmingham accent, and just up the road, the even stronger Black Country accent is appalling. It's absolutely dreadful. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Anyway, before any of the others turn up, so let's people talking to people. Yeah, the Russian. I quite like the Russian accent. I can't do it, but So, any gaming at all recently?
We did the OSE on Friday. I guess that was our 14th session, so I now only got up to 11 number recapped, so I'm 3 behind.
Got 3 videos to make.
Yeah, but they're laid out and ready to go. They had a good one. It was kind of a trilogy, so 12, 13, and 14 is all one extended adventure.
Ooh.
So so there'll be some
look forward to those
multi-parts. Yeah. And Night Below we play on Saturday, which is normally we do on Sundays, but we're finishing up. So,
which of course is why you can't take part in my French game, isn't it?
Correct. We moved up to the Saturday to accommodate everybody's schedule.
Disappointing, very disappointing.
Life is full of disappointments. You'll just have to live with it.
Yeah. I think you'd have played the part of Pressy, who is the young soldier with his head in the clouds, not a care in the world, and an eye for the ladies. I think that would have been a perfect character for you.
I'll take it.
He's completely reckless.
I resemble those remarks.
Although you could play the grizzled old veteran who's never been promoted because he's got an alcohol problem. That's another possibility.
I could resemble that one too, I think.
I played a bit of Middle-earth on Saturday, and we had quite an interesting session. And it could have easily collapsed in on itself because we got into a situation where we could have had a fight with about 40 combatants. And MERP combat is quite clunky and quite crunchy at the best of times. But when the group decided to get about 15 town guards to accompany them to attack a bandit stronghold, I was thinking, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to handle this? And I thought, hang on, the sides are roughly equal. I don't need to make loads of rolls. I'm just going to roll percentile dice for each side. Those who are not taking part directly with the PC, not interacting directly with the PCs. I'm just going to roll percentile dice for each side and play it by ear. If one side gets much higher than the other, then they've got the upper hand that round.
You mean your players don't want to sit there and listen to you narrate in detail all the NPCs fighting?
No.
I'm starting to question their dedication.
It's an online game as well. You've got to keep them moving. So I think especially sort of theatre of the mind online games, pace is vital. So I think it worked. I made one specific roll every round when a crack-shot bowman was firing at the sergeant of the guard. And I only really told the players what was happening there when he scored an extremely good hit, because it added something dramatic to the combat. All the other stuff didn't matter. The party were trying to keep themselves alive in their various little scuffles. So, good session, though. Very good session. Anyhow, we have been joined. By Monsieur Elfbait. So,
hello
Elfbait. Hello, Elfbait. How are you?
Doing all right. I lost track of time.
Oh, no worries. Just talk amongst yourselves. Just bear with me a minute.
Our host left us.
Vive la revolution.
Oh, he's back.
I am back. Sorry. I had to do something for the wife while she was out. And hopefully I've sent her the right things. My brother-in-law needs some pub quiz picture rounds for a school quiz he's doing. But I have just remembered I haven't sent them the answers, so I might get interrupted to give them the answers during the stream at some point. But anyway, Elfbait, sorry, I interrupted. How are you doing? You did lose track of time, as you say.
Yeah.
It's
late night, and then distracted by real life. So
it's easily done. Any gaming over the weekend?
On Monday, I got to actually run my 5e game, which
Marvelous.
Which was cool. It almost didn't happen because D&D Beyond decided to do a maintenance right at our start time, or around our start time, and seeing as we play online and everybody uses their D&D Beyond for their characters, except for one player in my group.
Let that be a lesson.
Well,
Yes.
and this actually is funny. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, "Yep, that online only play is just amazing." But no, I mean, I like a lot of the tools there. Their initiative tracker and their encounter builder is all really cool. But it ended up happening. It was pretty role play heavy. The party encountered 3 ghosts, not like ghosts, not like deadly encounter ghosts, but the spirits of 3 of the priests that used to inhabit the temple that's been overrun by Orcus and corrupted. So they had a little gab session with these 3 cantankerous old priests who have been going through the same routine for like the last 300 years. So,
the demon prince of death. Yes.
Yeah, they've been dealing with his minions for about 3 different adventures now, building up to this big push to the mountains to find the stronghold. And they beat the guy that was being corrupted, but now they're like being completists and trying to
yes,
to kill everything.
Isn't it always when people try to be completists that things tend to go wrong? I played in the Dragon Lords 5th edition game on Monday as a player, and yeah, we lost a player. Ran off by himself and encountered a cockatrice. Oops.
Oh yeah, the one of the characters in the party almost died in the completionist phase of the adventure because she decided to go into a room and it was full of fungus that was horrible, evil demon death fungus because of Orcus, and she was taking like 5d6 necromantic damage a turn if she failed her save each turn. And the first turn she got hit by like 28 points of damage. It's like, and because she inhaled it, is like it was affecting her mouth and her nose and stuff like that, so she couldn't cast spells or call for help or anything like that.
So I mean, that's the thing. You can kill characters in 5th edition if your DM is evil enough.
Yeah, and that's the thing that bugs me. Is like D&D, older D&D was just deadly by happenstance. It was dangerous. It wasn't necessarily deadly, but a party could die because of the way that just the way things went down. And I feel like in 5th edition I have to really try hard to menace the party.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and I don't want to try hard to challenge. I just want to set challenges and let them be naturally challenging. If that's logical.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it sets up an unintentional but almost necessary adversarial DM situation. And I don't want to be that guy. I've never been that guy. No, I'm the DM who will sometimes go ahead and like, I know we've been playing for a long time, but remember that thing you had from before?
Yeah. Why not? Why not just give them a little prompt from time to time?
Yeah.
It's the expectation of constant balance that bugs me about 5th edition.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And if you just throw that out the window, it's amazing how a lot sort of shifts in the direction you want. You don't have to try to kill them. You just, all right, here's the situation. It might be over your heads. You got to figure out if you want to run away or not.
Exactly.
Beat that expectation that anything can be beaten out of the players.
And that may be part of it, because I've always run my games that way. And so when I make a Temple of Orcus, it's going to be dangerous and deadly and evil like a Temple of Orcus should be, especially one that's got direct abyssal taint in it, not just some building that some guy built.
And if I make a goblin lair, it doesn't matter what level you are, there's going to be 80 plus goblins in there, plus leader types and all sorts,
plus
maybe
wargs, plus
all that sort of stuff. And if they want to go charging headlong into the middle, they're going to be up against all 80 of them at the same time, potentially.
I'm still a huge fan of the old, random encounter tables where you're like walking through the forest and there's a dragon. But we're 3rd level. Then how do you deal with the dragon you just met, or maybe didn't meet? Maybe I interpret it as a DM as it flew overhead, and then the party's like, "We gotta hide."
Anyway, shall we get on topic? Shall we get on topic? Tonight's topic is...
Yes, the inner Saxious is coming in to bring us back to topic.
I mean, I know
Yes.
Saxious
I
is
see you're
supposed to be
sexist and I counter you as sexist.
he is supposed to be joining us at some point. So we have to prepare ourselves. We have to get away with all the nonsense now, because we're going to have to step in line in a bit. But it's to do with how we start our games. What sort of opening salvos do we have in campaigns? Which are campaign games, obviously different in terms of what to one shots. One shots you can start with however you want. Just give them some pre-gens, drop them in the situation, off you go. That is the whole point of a one shot. Self-contained story, almost certainly. Whereas a campaign, obviously, you want to build it up a little. You want to get people invested. You want to start it organically, if at all possible. At least that's how I think. How do you guys do it?
Over the years, I've done it differently. I mean, when I was younger and had that more narrative focus, I would write up this massive introduction, write up, set music to it, and think I was so clever and creative. Meanwhile, everybody's nodding off.
Just see you sitting there, between the times when the ocean sank
drank Atlantis. Yes. Now I like to throw players into the mix. Now I haven't done this in a long time because most of the players I play with know my style. But when it's somebody new or somebody who's used to 5th Ed, what I like to do is what I call the training scenario, where I put them right in the middle of they're on a posse. They're hunting goblins who've kidnapped a villager. All right, and then when all is said and done, they find the villager trussed up on a hill, and the goblins have laid a trap. Goblins almost every time butcher the players, like right down to the last man, and then boom, the reveal. This is all a training mission, all a training session with the local militia, and so nobody's actually died, though they didn't know that at the time. And the big lesson is, what have we learned? It's like, don't rush into a fight. Exactly.
I suppose that's one way of saying, right, okay. Yeah.
This is how deadly it is. This is how the dice roll. And it usually works. Most players, they got it. It's like, in this system, okay, one stray hit will kill you. But aside from, I haven't done that in years because now everybody knows the gag. It works better when players don't know what's coming. I'll just create a bunch of scenarios. I'll put plot threads. I like sandboxes, so I'll seed 6 very obvious threads plus 6 or 7 hidden threads that players actually have to look for, more profitable ones. And then, all right, what do you want to do? And
I mean, with your current
some rumors.
With your current campaign, you're using bits and pieces of published modules. Is that common for you?
For the Keep on the Borderlands, yeah, I'm doing the familiar because the plan for the review caps was I wanted to review published modules, right, and show them. So it's mostly going to be all published stuff, but I'm also lazy, so even in my private games, I do something similar. But I still like the sandbox approach. I like having the options out there, and then sometimes players will choose, or they'll do something, or a consequence of their action will come up. It's like, oh, I can work with this, and I'll create my own scenario and then feed that in. So everything is just this one big organic world. But to kick it all off, I like just sort of players are together, the cliche of starting in the inn, which, a tavern is a public house. That's where people would meet. But,
exactly.
Here you are. I always also like to assume character acquaintance. Nothing, is worse than watching players who aren't actors try to act the first meetings. It can be very painful to watch. So I just
hail friend at the bar. Good morrow to you.
You look like a wizard. We need a wizard to go on this grand adventure.
Or like that character who like levitates across the room suddenly when he hears the mention of adventure, like some sort of cartoon character being drawn by the scent of a pie on the shelf.
So I like to tell players, assume acquaintance. You already know each other. Whatever secrets and histories you've got planned, that's fine. But you have, even if you just met each other yesterday, you already made that introduction. You don't have to portray that. And then I'll drop everybody, especially in a starting campaign. Everybody gets a rumor or two, things that they've heard. plus whatever backstory they've come up with. I don't encourage large backstories, but if you want to do a little something, by all means, and then let them choose, let them roll with it. The when our AD&D game came back from the pandemic, most of the characters coming in were first level. Two of them had existing characters who had survived the previous, and it's like I did that exact thing, and they chose, hey, we've heard there's a wormling green dragon, let's go hunt it. And it's like, oh, you want to go hunt a dragon? Okay. They thought, it's just a wormling, how hard can it be, right? But that was what they chose, and off they went.
It has the suffix ling. It must be small,
it must be small. It was an 8 hit point green dragon, but
yes,
they still have to hit it. It had an armor class of I think 1 or 2, and they're mostly first level characters. They did end up beating it, but not before 4 of them were dead.
Inspired by the famous Elmore artwork.
Oh, I love that painting. That cover where that party's just so proud with that hatchling.
Yeah, that little hatchling, yeah,
strung up by the tail.
Yes. So, Elfbait, how do you tend to kick things off?
It varies a lot. When I first started out, we were very much, I think, seeing as I started playing D&D by accident and didn't come into it through other D&D players, most of my adventure building was built around like the movies and stuff that I had seen. So we drew a lot from Westerns and whatever fantasy movies were out at the time. So it was a lot of like trying to replicate, Conan and meeting Subutai and then Valeria. But later on, I mean, as I evolved, I like to run a thematic campaigns a lot too. And so in those games, I'll often tailor the beginning to whatever the theme is. So for the Vagabond Seas pirate campaign that I not pirate, but nautical campaign I ran, the name of the campaign setting was taken directly from the characters that the players made. That was a game I started originally for the group of teenagers that I was running in 5th edition, plus my wife. And they all decided to make a variety of characters that were all kind of down and outers from, because they were all starting at first level, down and outers from the waterfront and stuff. So we had 2 orphans from the same orphanage. We had the local wizard's apprentice, who was from the old crusty wizard at the end of the quay or quay, whatever you want to call it. I can never pronounce it. Just like
key.
Yeah, no, I know it's key, but my life of mispronouncing that word. Yeah, it's like. But anyways, and then we had the itinerant, sea god priest that kind of lived in a little bivouac on the waterfront, and then my wife's character, who was an out of work goblin pirate. And they were all just kind of, that was the group. And we started with them having one of their street friends talk about a shipwreck that had landed, that had come in on the rocks, and that was the first adventure, and that kicked off the campaign. Other games, I've had people start in a wagon being prisoners on their way to somewhere, a la Skyrim. But I still have done the inn. You're in an inn. My current campaign, everybody started out as residents of the hometown at 0 level. And, so we have the innkeeper's daughter. We have the clockmaker's son. We had the local druid's apprentice from the wood next door. And an employee of the inn. And that one was that's been very cool, because I gave them each a handout saying, hey, here's some questions, answer this about the town, because I didn't have a town built. I'm like, whatever they put in, what's something that nobody knows about the town? What's something everybody knows about the town? And everybody would write something different. So I built the town out of that. It was fun. So that helped me with a lot of the starter adventures and stuff.
I mean, if I'm running a sandbox, and to be honest, I've not done many sandboxes, but more recently, and I'm sure it's an old story, and I'm sure regulars will know it, but I tried to make a sandbox recently, and I created a couple of towns. I mapped out sort of within about 20 miles of the towns, and I filled in a few bits and pieces, just enough, just a basic framework. A small pantheon of gods, just a few notes about them, and then I sketched out a very basic opening scenario, very small scenario, just to start with. So I do like to start with some scenario just to get the group together. I told everyone to create an AD&D character. I gave them a list of available character races because I was going to limit those. And I started the session by basically describing the town, saying, well, okay, these are the gods and whatever. You all know each other because you are all refugees who've helped build this town over the last year or two. And I went around the table and said, okay, so they'd all made their characters. What have you been doing in the last year or two? Then to another character, another player. Okay, and what's your character been doing in terms of working around town? What's your role been in the development of this little society? Just went round, and then I said, okay, so that's all your characters. That's all what you've been doing. That's how you all know each other. Off you go. They all sort of looked at me and said, what? I said, it's a pleasant spring morning. What are you all up to? I described what they were doing, and I turned to the guy who was playing a paladin and said, so you're on guard duty this morning? Yeah, okay. It's fairly quiet. You can't find your guard captain anywhere. Where do you think your guard captain will be? And the player said, oh, he's probably in the pub. There we go. Okay, so I made a little note saying guard captain, possible alcoholic. And they started role playing and started getting into it. And I was just making notes, creating things to do with the town, aspects, even little aspects to do with the various ways of worshipping the gods and all sorts, while they were role playing. And then I said, oh, and a little out of breath halfling comes running up to the gate. I said to the paladin, you spot him probably 300 or 400 yards off. It looks like one of the halfling farmers from the village of Woodside, a couple of miles up the road. He looks a bit desperate. And it went from there. And he basically was running around town, gathering up people to say, we've got to come and help this halfling. And I just let it grow from there and just made notes. And a lot of the time in that session, I just sat back and let the characters interact with each other. Rolled very few dice. I just had a pad and just kept making notes. And from then on, the campaign was pretty much built around the sort of things that they were doing and saying in that hour, because it created so much for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And the great thing is, even there's no dice roll or no encounters or anything, the players are engaged. They're sitting there yapping with one another, engaged, and the time just blinks by and nobody's bored.
Exactly.
Yeah, with the starting in the prisoner's wagon, that was fun too, because they're all kind of stuck there. They don't have any equipment. They can't really fight, and they have no other choice other than to kind of just sit there and role play with one another. But as I describe what's going on, and as they're being led in there, and then they start interacting, and that was those are good. Those role play, those kind of warm role play starts. They give you them a seed to role play with. So
yeah. I dropped the little seed of the out of breath halfling, and the way they role played it as well was, it added a few sort of ongoing jokes, because the paladin was very stupid and was confusing the halfling's name and was confusing characters' names the way he was role playing it, and that became an ongoing sort of running gag. But to me, it made the players invested, because they realized what they were doing was helping make the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that you would establish their backstories as having been people who built the town up, which also gives them that investment in the town. They have a reason to want to defend it or to help it prosper.
Yeah, it's same thing with my zero level campaign. And when I decided to make them all from that place, I wanted to have the hometown matter. And boy, did they deliver. I mean, they've got like, the clockmaker's son has a special springs that his dad sends him to get the spring water, and he makes side money by selling that spring water to the innkeeper's daughter's family. And then my wife invented like a mom and a dad and like 3 other siblings. Like, there was none of this tragic backstory for any of the characters. It was just like they had this very warm, grounded home that I could then ruin their characters' lives with adventure. But
I mean, I think for me, a lot depends on familiarity with the system and whether I'm using a pre-published game world or trying to create my own game world. If I'm using a pre-published game world, I tend to like a small scenario that's ready written for that world to help establish it. If it's my own creation, then I will just improvise. Certainly when I started the recent MERP game, I had a little scenario taken from the Shire, the second edition MERP supplement to the Shire, and I developed it, changed bits and pieces of it, but it's a nice, pleasant little starting scenario, and it requires the party to begin in a village of your choice in the Shire. So I just said to the players, "Oh, well, what are you doing in the Shire? What's your purpose here?" None of them were playing halflings, hobbits,
Pipeweed,
whatever they were doing, and basically one of the sheriffs offered them honorary sheriff status to help her out. It was a female halfling sheriff, a hobbit. I keep saying halfling, hobbit, female, and she offered them a little sort of badge of rank for temporary sheriff and help me out, help me deal with these seemingly plague infested group who were trying to encroach on our territory. Okay, so off they went. But once that was completed, I said to the players, "Okay, you've got a few bits and pieces, a few little leads that you've picked up of things that could be going on, and much like you've done with your OSE game, Mage, 3 or 4 possible little scenarios. Off you go. Where do you want to go? Which one do you want to follow?"
Yeah, exactly. And again, I like seeding hidden ones too, ones that aren't immediately obvious, but might have potentially larger rewards. And then people have to do some digging. Not that anybody does, but they just take what's in front of them.
I haven't done any of those yet. I have to say, I'm not quite as slick with running MERP in terms of having that sort of confidence to prepare just the bare bones of a wide number of scenarios. I've got 2 or 3 possibilities at any one time, but with a little bit more preparation done. But MERP demands that. It demands that little bit extra sort of detailed preparation, which is a bit of a pain like that. But
one of the things I did when I did this current campaign is I made a area map that was 2 weeks across, 2 weeks foot travel from edge to edge, and told the players flat out, everything that you see on this map, everything that's marked and labeled is things you know of. You at least know where it is, and you know of it by reputation. There wasn't anything hidden, although there were some places like the Sundered Temple, and
that can be found,
or Frog Keep, like things with evocative names, and they're the Death Kiss Swamp. Let's stay away from there, or let's go there. And then I had
a copy of White Plume Mountain, that famous map, White Plume Mountain, which has got Thin Gizzard and the potion selling witch and the undead dragon, and also just dotted around a map, just as things for a DM to nothing to do with the adventure, just things that the DM can mess about with.
Man, I give them like a little page of bullet pointed notes to like, this river is used to trade with the halflings up north, and this river is where the dwarves, trade metal down the river for grain up the river. Yeah. So
it just gives you
this forest is the one that you don't go into because the elves will kill you. But
it's just a few little notes for you to build on, to develop, and for them
exactly. And when the players look at the map and see that there's only one like honest to goodness like fortress there. Like, why is that must be important. They've never gone there because it's at the far edge of the map. 2 weeks travel to get to Greywatch, which is the only major port in the area. They're like, we have no reason to go there.
Yeah.
I also put a tower in about 2 days travel into the dangerous woods. And that is where the wizard, the Sagely wizard is. They can go to him, but they have to go through to the deadly woods. It's got a name, but it doesn't matter. We all have that forest, right?
Yeah,
and
of course.
And so they go there, and it's like a safe haven there once they get there. But they've got to go 2 days through it. Every time they've gone through the forest, they've run into something. At one point, one of them got attacked by some elven undead I made up off the cuff, and another time they ran into a patrol of the elves who were going to haul them in and basically put them to the sword for invading, and then they dropped a couple names. Another time they ran afoul of, quote unquote, big air quotes, because it ended up being able to do a favor for him, of a treant. And they're like, this treant's like, hey, what are you doing in my woods? Did you take my acorns? And they're like, what? No, we didn't take your acorns. He's like, well,
my babies.
It turns out it was this brownie that was up to shenanigans, and then they tracked the brownie down, and they thought they had him, but he had actually tricked them and led them to an Ettercaps lair. But
oh, lovely. Now, let's bring up first chat comment. I don't avoid starting people in a tavern. As was it Mage? Was it you said that or which of the two of you said a tavern is a natural meeting point, a natural place to
we're all agreed on that one.
Yeah. I have no problem with starting in a tavern. I'm quite happy with it, and starting in a prison for me is something more for a one-shot scenario. If I'm starting a campaign, I probably won't start in a prison. I know there's quite a few big campaigns that do, but I'm not a big fan of starting in a prison. I am. You might have seen in Discord, I'm planning on running N4 treasure hunt for my my face-to-face group on a Monday night. We're going to be running it through Discord for various reasons. And that starts with a shipwreck.
They're slaves and they get shipwrecked.
Yeah. It just casts them onto an island. It's like, off you go. You're all level 0. You're on a desolate island. How are you going to deal with this?
I was thinking about that the other day too. That module came up. I don't know if it was something you did or something I was watching on another channel, but that would be a good jumping off point towards Isle of Dread also. Like, it's like, okay, you now get off the island. Or just mash it up with Isle of Dread. You're crashed on the Isle of Dread.
Unfortunately, one of the players who's potentially playing has bought probably 2 or 3 old school modules, and Isle of Dread is one of them.
Isle of Dread's big enough and got enough going on that you can customize that so much.
Oh, of course you can.
Yeah. Feel free
as
to
far
change
as
something, yeah.
Starting in prisons, I try to start kind of like I mentioned, they had them in the prison wagon that one time. They weren't in a prison wagon. They were actually having been captured after all having it encountered with a purple bearded man in an inn individually. They had like been drugged and then like woke up in this thing, and then there was that. So they're prisoners, but they're not in a prison. I've had them start, in the yard being, brought into a prison. I think prisons can be a good start, but I think putting them in an actual prison cell is kind of a hard one to run, because you have to rely on the players having being able to figure out a way to get themselves out, unless you have some sort of event that precipitates their escape. Like, okay, you're in prison, but
now something I don't mind putting them in prison during the game.
Oh yeah.
If they've done something to get in there, and I know they've probably got the capabilities to get out in some way, but yeah, I'm quite happy to arrest them and drop them in prison after they've been adventuring for a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you're going to start them in prison, going back to the whole Skyrim start, your character is pretty much dead except for there's a dragon attack.
Yeah, I've never played Skyrim, but I have seen the introduction where there's those beheading going on, and you're on the cart due to be beheaded or something.
Yeah, that's an Elder Scroll trope. Every character in all the Elder Scroll games starts a prisoner.
Right.
Yeah, but in those cases, they've always got some sort of canned event that precipitates the character's escape too. So
yeah.
Just saying, I haven't reviewed N4 yet. Part of the reason for me running N4 is that I want to have a chance so I can review it. Yes, I mean I've read it a few times, but I've never run it. So I ran
it about 10 years ago. I didn't use the 0 level concept. I used established first level characters, but they still had a hard enough time, so I wasn't too worried.
And one thing I've done with that one as well is I've created got them to create the characters using method 3 in the Dungeon Master's Guide, 3d6 6 times for each ability, but in order, which is something they're not used to. Their characters are going to have good ability scores, but they can't rearrange them as they choose. So they're going to have to sort of play what they get. But it does. I think it gives them. I wanted to do that because I wanted to give them options, but not necessarily the total flexibility to channel whatever they wanted. So, a couple of the characters, for example, there's a couple with like high intelligence, wisdom, and dexterity or something, and they've got plenty of options to go for, but no real opportunity to play a tough warrior. But I just want to see what they come up with and see how they role play it. So,
well, Treasure Hunt's good for that. I mean, it's obviously meant to be like a campaign kickoff because you start at 0 level, and then at some point, the goddess comes down and grants you your character class.
And anyway, I do want to say that we've been discussing starts for a while, for the last 40 odd minutes, and none of us have actually said the right answer. When starting an AD&D campaign, the correct answer for the start is Saltmarsh.
I have done that, but
I want to do that. I actually had to have the conversation with my wife the other day. I'm like, so if I was to restart the Vagabond Seas game, would you be okay taking your character back to first level? She's like, what do you mean? Like start all over again? I'm like, consider it an alternate reality for your character. I'm like, the first time I ran it was very freeform, and I'm like, I have a plan now. And it starts in Saltmarsh.
The other right answer is Hamlet.
Yeah.
Or keep on the Borderlands.
My second ed campaign, now defunct, but I started one group at least in Hamlet, and I had made them part of the community there. They weren't just strangers who showed up; they were part of the community, and that goes back to what you're saying. If they're part of the community, it means a lot to them. And then I did my usual thing, like I had Saltmarsh, a 3-day trip from Hamlet. It was my own map. It was my own homebrew settings, so I didn't care about the mix and match. But it's a great one because you've got this fleshed out community there with everybody's house literally laid out, how much they own and who they are, and that really lends to the idea that the players are involved because the DM has that intimate information of the characters. Saltmarsh, you have to actually make it yourself because it's not laid out. Hamlet is great for that.
In one of the 3rd edition books, they've got a detailed map of Saltmarsh with it all fleshed out.
Fifth edition Saltmarsh.
It's really good. I quite like it. It would work really well. You can use it with any module.
They've got the entire U series redone, plus a bunch of stuff from from Dungeon Magazine and stuff all cobbled together into that.
It's a 7 adventure book. Yeah.
Yep.
That version of Saltmarsh that's in that it's ideally set after the events of the U series, and there's too many non-human individuals in the town because Saltmarsh is meant to be a sleepy little, very old English sort of little fishing port. And to me, that feels like a mostly human settlement limited facilities.
I don't disagree, but that's something that can't be altered. You can't change.
Of course, it can't.
When you've got the map and the basic template, you can just pick and choose what you want to keep.
I slightly redid the map. I mean, the map's very, very developed, and it had got some quite affluent areas, which I didn't think fitted into my vision of Saltmarsh. So what I basically said, how there's meant to be a merchant who's on the take at the beginning of that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few slightly more wealthy individuals in town who were beginning to build larger residences just out of town. And I chopped off the bit where they were already built from the map. And so it had a feel of more of a developing place than a place that had already been developed.
I keep hoping that Goodman Games will redo that.
I don't think they can.
They probably won't. Actually, they won't now that an official WotC book came out for it. Now that I think that was the other thing too. It was like, I'm like, hope they do Saltmarsh at some point.
Yeah, they had the rights to certain modules, but not everyone else.
I don't think anything that WotC plans to or has touched they'll do, which means that Dwellers in the Forbidden City unfortunately won't get redone by them, because I thought that they could run with that really well, because that's in the Forbidden City is they did it in
Tomb of Annihilation.
Well, Tomb of Annihilation, but also no, actually it's Tomb. That's in Tomb of Annihilation, and then they also had the other one, which is Tomoichin. They put that in
yes.
The one
Yawning Portal.
Yawning Portal.
Yeah. Yes. There've been a few that unfortunately the license will be a bit iffy to get hold of. I see chat have been suggesting a few things. They're discussing the N modules now as starting adventures. Someone's mentioned Against the Call to the Reptile God. It is a great module to start a campaign with, and as Halakar
not a novice module.
As Halakar says here, experienced players, and I would say experienced DMs as well. It is a superb adventure, but for it to be in the N series, which is short for novice, was completely wrong. It's not a novice adventure at all. It's okay. It's for first and second level characters. It's low level, but it's not for novices. It is far too tough. And for the DM as well, yes, the town is neatly done, but to get the most out of it, I think the DM needs a bit of experience. I don't think a novice DM will do a great job of that adventure at all. Sorry, novice DMs. But and of course, N2 was dreadful.
Yeah, well, that's the perfect starting module for a novice DM. They'll read the text and they'll either go, what the hell is this, and throw it away, and then you'll know they've got the chops, or they'll try to make it work, and then they'll learn the hard way.
Yeah. What was N3? I can't remember N3 off the top of my head.
I think that was To Find a King.
Yeah.
Let me look it up. I've got the whole N series. Destiny of Kings.
Destiny of Kings. That wasn't first level though, was it? I think on the cover isn't that the one where there's an error? They put like level 1 to 4 on the cover, but you open it up and you're thinking, hang on, this is not a first level adventure.
Yeah, that describes half the adventures published for AD&D.
Well, yeah, because they're always like anywhere from 6 to 42 characters from level.
Yeah,
I'm exaggerating, of course, but
I think that's the thing that you have to remember when you're looking at those old modules. If they say levels 1 to 3, they're assuming 8 to 10 characters, not 3 or 4
I also
characters.
because
find they can only put so much on the cover. When you go into them, they'll tell you a lot of times they'll go such and such number of characters between such and such number, such and such levels for a total of blah 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 levels of experience. And a lot of them, especially the later ones, would do that, which is why when we did Temple of Elemental Evils, everybody's like, your Cavalier is insanely high level. We'll just have him make up for all the levels.
Yeah.
Kabuki Kid, I think Forest Oracle's got the right levels on it, but I think just Forest Oracle is a misprint, full stop.
You really hate that much.
It's bloody awful. It's absolute garbage. And how that got through, I don't know. It's just, you read the first 5 or 6 pages and just go, what?
All right, here's your challenge. Rewrite it as a good module. Keeping everything there, rewrite it.
Even the framework is kind of weak. Yeah, it would take an overhaul.
Yeah, it is. It's just awful. It's awful.
I actually ran
it. In it.
TPK'd an entire group because the Harpies got them all.
Harpies can be nasty. I mean, you know, people think of them like I had them. I ran an encounter with them in my game, and I just put down Harpies, just thinking of Harpies, and then I forgot the fact that Harpies in D&D have like the weird like
the siren song. Yeah,
the siren song. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. So I'm just thinking flying women, you know, with claws. It's not going to be that bad.
yeah.
But
don't forget the claws.
Conflates the harpy and the siren. You know.
Yeah. Well, don't forget the claws of the Harpies also inflict the charm, even if the song doesn't get it. So
yeah, I did run a fun one where later on I got rid of the songs. I made like a lesser harpy, and I then had some of them carrying rocks, like big heavy rocks in their talons, and dropping them on the party.
Nice.
And that whole fight was while the players were in the middle of the river on a boat, so they had limited mobility.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't thinking of herpes. It's of harpies. It's a bit early in the stream to start going down that tangent. Right.
Are you kidding? Elle was commenting before the stream was live.
Oh yeah.
He's ahead of us. So
yeah, true. Very true. Very true. I mean, while we're on the subject of starting modules, yeah, you've mentioned the Village of Hamlet. I mean, that is for me the perfect sandbox start. I prefer it to Keep on the Borderlands personally, because I prefer the way the town is done in comparison to the keep itself. And I think the keep is too crowded. Not the keep. I think the caves are too crowded. And equally, I don't find hordes upon hordes of different bands, different groups of humanoids particularly inspiring. Yeah, the temple bit's great, but I'm not particularly inspired by a kobold cave, a goblin cave, a hobgoblin cave, an orc cave, and a gnoll cave. It just, yeah, you can have a bit of interplay between them, but I'd rather have a bit more interesting foes. I think. And if I'm doing a lair of a type of creature, I like the lair to be a bit more focused.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure B2 was really just kind of trying to showcase this is what kind of stuff you're going to have in the game.
Yeah,
but I think that if you approach it as an advanced or experienced DM, you can you can definitely make a good case for all those things being there, because essentially with that cult there, you kind of have a Saruman thing going on where, you know, like, I'm gathering all the forces of evil.
Yes. I mean, yeah. Put it in the hands of a creative DM, and yes, it is a great framework to build from. It's just never really inspired me. I have to say, I do prefer the Village of Hamlet, because I like the way the town is set up, and I do like the moat house as a beginning dungeon, and as you all know, I love Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. I think it is possibly the best AD&D module, simply because I've used it so many times and it's never let me down.
I know Hamlet has one big thing that can stall it out. At least it did when we played it back in the day, because we tried to start with Hamlet because it's a beginner's adventure. It's very clear that it's a beginner adventure. So I had B2 in my box set, but then my buddy Brian went out and got Hamlet. He's like, I have the AD&D starter one. It has the same freaking monsters. But no, we got bogged down in that one because the thieves in our party, and I say thieves plural, really took the bite at all of that loot being listed in there. You know, the possessions of every single person in town, and we spent I don't know how many sessions with the thieves in the party trying to go steal, like break into everybody's houses and steal everything.
Yeah, you get caught, roll up a new character.
Yeah.
But it definitely it can definitely derail your game if you're trying to get on to the moat house and everything, and the thieves are like, no, one more heist.
Yeah. I'm about. I've seen Kabuki Kid has mentioned Judges Guild Adventures. I didn't get any when I was younger. I have a couple of them on my shelf unused, which I've got to try and use sometime. I've got the Illadrin book up there somewhere, which is a first level adventure, and I have backed the recent Dark Tower Kickstarter, which I want to dive into. So I'm not hunting down any information about Dark Tower at all until that arrives, and then I'm just going to dive into it and hopefully run it at some point.
Yeah, the Judge Guild stuff is completely new to me. I never played any of it either, and
I didn't see much of it on the shelves here. That's the thing. I might have seen the odd one or two, but I was 13 or 14 or 15 when I was doing most of my buying originally, and I was looking for official TSR adventures with shiny covers.
Yep, I was the same. I'm in one of the games I'm in that I get a break from DMing is an OSE game, and the guy's putting us through the caverns of Thracia, and
right.
That's like, oh, he tells me, yeah, it's meant for first level characters, and like, you know, we get swarmed by wights and armies of gnolls. I'm like, first level.
I was always surprised by how many low level adventures had packs of ghouls.
Yeah, packs. Yeah.
I always just assumed that they figured that at least every part. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, a pack of ghouls, but whereas like, is one in a crypt or two is fine, but yeah, packs, one will wipe out an entire group.
I almost feel like they just assumed because of the time that it was made in that at least every party would have at least one elf.
Yeah.
At least
somebody's gonna have a Legolas. There's gonna be a Legolas in the party, or if you're in my group, Crow from Hawk the Slayer, because he was the big screen elf.
But even so, yes. I mean, an elf won't get paralyzed, but they'll still get torn to shreds.
That is true, but he'll last one more turn. Maybe.
That's what happened. That's what happened the last time I ran against the Cult of the Reptile God. My group decided to be all completionist under the inn. They'd found the clues to the source of the cult with the reptile statue and all that sort of stuff, and they were like, oh, there's one bit of this area we haven't been in yet. And I was there going, and there's a stench emanating from that passage. It smells, it's rotten. It smells of maggot infested flesh. It's really unpleasant. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, let's go that way then. I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go. Party of 5 characters, all first level. They got one elf. The elf led them into the room where there's 3 or 4 ghouls. The elf got torn to bits in the first round. And as you say, everyone else just got massacred afterwards. And it was, okay, yeah. So, you have, this is why I made you all roll up 2 characters before we started this adventure, because the other 5 are now playing. Right, and anyway, we have only an hour late. Only an hour late.
I've also been busy setting up a new game.
How dare you, sir?
How dare you have fun?
Priorities.
All right.
Good evening, Saxius. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thanks for letting me in.
No worries at all. Well, you chose the topic tonight, and we've already had a good old chat about different ways of starting, sort of sandboxy starts.
Yep.
You chose the topic, so I'm hoping you've prepared something for us.
No, I have prepared. I mean, it's very much down for the beginning that you want as a group. Now, whether you want to do that, with the players having engagement and inputting, or with the DM coming forth, with an entire world pre-made, or even just a small area. That comes more down to style and preferences. I like to, how would you put it? Like, I like to zoom in at an area and I like to give the broad strokes of the world to the players. That way, the players can go, "Oh, we like the sound of this kingdom. Tell us more about this kingdom." Well, here's the map of this kingdom, and here are some of the places you can go. We can start off in, and then they'll look at the map with very little knowledge, because I don't want them to have preconceived notions of what are these lands going to be like, because they were either born there or they traveled there. And then they go, "We like the sound of this name. Tell us more." And then I give them the pitch of that area. And usually they'll then go like, "Oh, this sounds nice. Let's roll up some characters." And where do we begin from there? I take the approach of 0 to hero. The players start off at a low level. In my point of view, you are peasantry, unless you roll up a character and go, "He's actually a nobleman of some grade or not." And you as a group should know one another. There should be a reason for how you know one another. And right there, that is a golden opportunity in my eyes for me to go around the group and go, "Well, what is your character? So you're playing the thief. Well, you're not exactly, known as a thief. What do you do outside of that? And how do you know another person?" And you have to point to that other person and explain how you know them. And then they build up the relationship, because that's where the focus often begins for me. How does the players know each other? Being a group of complete random strangers meeting together and just going, "Hey, we're all desperate for money. Let's band together, go out and become mercenaries, and come home and evenly split the money, because we have reasons to do that." This allows me to bring the immersion into the players. The players get to bring life into the world by contributing, saying, "Oh, I work at a tavern. I work at the docks. I actually have a farm that we often go and visit and we hang out at." Or, "I'm married. I've got a kid. That kid needs, money to go off and become what he wants. So I need to go and do these things." So it's something that.
What I am going to say now is, if for some reason, Saxius, you watch back the first hour of this stream tomorrow, you're going to be very proud of me, Mage, and Elfbait.
Oh, have you stayed on topic?
Well, no, it's just what you've just said there about ways of them knowing each other and
good.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's the sort of thing we've been talking about.
I'll bake a brownie and send it to you all.
Oh, marvelous.
Shipping to North America might be expensive. So
no, it'll just come. It'll come with Nurgle's blessings and everything else.
On your note about players knowing each other, I mean, I was saying I do it different. I assume acquaintance. I don't necessarily make the players tell me how they know each other. And part of the reason I do that is I don't know if you've seen the videos of my recaps, especially OSE. There's a high turnover of characters, and so I don't want to go through this whole thing about how everybody knows each other when they're on their fourth character, in a row.
But Sean, you have to make them invested. So their tears are so much more delicious when they die.
Well, they get invested enough, especially now that I mean, I'm a couple of episodes behind. There's leveled characters now. Some people have made level 2 and 3, and the one guy who's level 3 is like and he's the youngest player. He's 17. He's like now clinging to him. He's like, "I don't know if I want to play him anymore. He might die."
Good. I approve of these methods. But yes, no, that these methods are definitely what I go for, and what I often find is that the world only expands as much as what the players decide that they want to know for, and that's often where the beginning sort of really begins. Let the players go out and explore, let them go out and do things, let them go out and find things. And if you're lucky and you get one of those players who are like, "Oh, let's ask questions, let me take notes, let's do these things," almost like a student eagerly wanting to learn something from the class. That's to me, that is one of the greatest gifts I can ever have from a player, someone that immerses themselves into the world. Because then
if you've seen my Friday streams, Dan, who's joined me a couple of them recently, comes on as Kelsor. He's that player.
Yeah.
He is the player who will make copious notes. and
Yeah.
he will, and it's great. I mean, he's relatively new to role playing games, but he's thrown himself in, and he will make notes and invest himself in the setting, which is great. It's what you want from a new player. Someone who doesn't think, right, okay, I've heard D&D should be like this, so I want the game to be like this. It's like, okay, what's the setting? How can I interact with it?
Yeah.
How can I make my character work with the setting? And he's gone straight in like that, which is brilliant.
Completely agree, and that's exactly what you want from a player. And at the end of to something that I don't know if it's often said, but it is also down for the player to contribute to the beginnings, and it's down for the team, to find their own rhythm. And it's, especially if it's a new group, it's going to take some time for everyone to get into the old groove. Like, okay, well, who does what? How do I act? Is it my turn now? That sort of thing. But that comes, and online it's going to have its own way where everyone has to be quiet when one person speaks, whereas if you're sitting in person, there'll be the DM will talk to one person, two others will start discussing something else, and the third person will decide that, oh, maybe it's now time to go through the notes while everything else is going on. And it can generate a lot of liveliness to the games. And at the beginning, it's worth having, I don't know if you've already talked about an introduction in terms of what the group can do to bring them out into the idea of like adventuring. Is that anything that's been touched on yet?
We haven't.
I mean, my refugee one had a short introduction, but it wasn't in depth in any way.
I mean, I've done that. I did my paid gig as a DM where I was actually making money being a DM for a store to accommodate random players who decided to come in and pay to play. I had a little handout that said, it was the basically the poster they all responded to, and I'm like, why are you here? Yeah, like, here's your introduction. And then you tell me why your character is here, and what is it that drew you here?
Yeah, a part of that is, of course, the experience level of the player. Like a lot of players at my table, I don't need to tell them how to play it; they just get into it. But for newer players, if I'm introducing somebody to the game, I'll go over with them the do's and the don'ts, and the parameters.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking in terms of like the actual session one, game wise, when you begin at your level 1 or level 0, or you're about to set out on the first adventure, does anyone here have a set way that they go about introducing people into for their group? Because I like to start with something small, something communal. Like my second edition group was a case of chickens had gone missing. The local dwarf was being blamed for it, and it was causing some tensions. Because
you mean like an opening scenario?
Yeah, that's what I was going for. An opening scenario that sort of like draws the group in, because especially when they're low level and in the very beginning, there's got to be something that initiates for the group to go out. I try to sort of look at what the group or what the team composes of, and go, right, well, I need to make sure that there's at least something for everyone to do here, at least at different stages, so that you're not looking at one person or a group of players specifically dominating everything from start to finish and just kowtowing the rest of the players along. There's got to be moments where you go, all right, and now we switch over to these characters, and then let's get these characters to go do some act at this point.
I mean, if I'm running a sandbox, I will almost always have a short 1 or 2 session scenario sketched out, just to sort of tease them in a little bit, get them their first small haul of things that they can find interesting, bit of information, maybe make a few acquaintances, that sort of thing, just to get them into it gradually. Nothing too intense, nothing too
kind
world
of a
shattering
tutorial level.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, I know with my current game, they started out on a basic fetch quest. They had to go to the special spring that the one character had decided was part of the locale, and get some water. And when they got there, there was a minor threat. Basically, some skeevy fairy folk was using it as a bath and gumming it all up. And then they dealt with him, and then they went home. You know? So, but it allowed them to get to know their characters, know each other as their play style. I mean, they've all kind of played together anyways before, but kind of see how their characters worked in action.
Yeah.
And I mean, there've been times that opening scenario has backfired. I mean, the one I used to start my recent online MERP game is a. It's for Saxius's benefits. He missed this early on, but it's a group of diseased travelers arrived on the edge of the Shire, and the town sheriffs don't want them anywhere near their village. So the players are tasked with just trying to sort of keep them away and shoo them away and find a way of getting rid of them. The guy who is leading the diseased travelers is actually he's been corrupted, and he is a MERP version of a ghoul. He's immune to the disease that's affecting his people. He still has some degree of protective feelings towards them, though he might start eating them at some point. But he's a particularly difficult foe. And I used that for one group, and he absolutely massacred them because two of them decided to go for a stroll and chat with him. And learned straight away why you don't split the party. Because when he returned without them a little bit later on, and the other two were like, well, where are the others? And the guy was like, come quickly, there's been an accident. He killed those two as well. But if all four of them had fought him together, they'd have had a chance. Anyway, that's just the way that one went, and it was a complete party kill. That's MERP for you.
Yeah.
But thinking along different lines, sort of like one of my favorite introductions, and Sean Majesty Musings played in this. I loved the introduction to the Cthulhu scenario Forget Me Not, where everybody woke up in a van, not knowing who they were, where they were, or why they were there. Okay, it was a one shot, but I think that made for some very, very interesting role playing to start off with, and gave a whole different feel to that scenario, because nobody knew what their skills were. Nobody knew what their real purpose was to start with. They just knew that they were in a van. They didn't feel too good. They were feeling a bit rotten. What were they doing in a ditch in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere? And that was my last Saturday. So every time I've run that, the first hour or so of that has been great. As they're slowly waking up and sort of discovering where they are and what they're doing, and little bits about their character, and the way that all the pieces just fall together in that one. But that is a one shot. You can't do that sort of thing you can't do it very often, unfortunately. But it was a great way to start off an adventure.
That's good. That's also the main thing, setting off. I mean, at least in my opinion, the very beginning is also the place where the tone of the game is also going to be set. What kind of lethality are you looking at? What kind of world is it going to be? Where is the players going to be finding themselves within, the social hierarchy and just the general environment that they're in? Is there any requirements or any insights that they need to, learn? That's the sort of thing that ideally the players would try to establish that as they get into the world. It's also because it is role playing. You need to role play your way through it. You need to engage and act out. Your interactions with the different groups.
Yeah, I know. I don't. I mean, you could use that to start a campaign, but I don't know if I'd want to do it in a D&D type game. It's much better for a horror setting, because obviously
Well, yeah.
the way you start a scenario or campaign does depend heavily on the setting. You're going to start. The whole prison or enslavement type opening would suit a Dark Suns campaign.
Yes.
But it probably wouldn't suit many other settings quite as well. And starting in an inn is perfect for.
Yeah. Most players have this pathological opposition to being slaves or captured, so
yeah,
they will fight. They will fight to break free. It's the most interesting thing to watch. So yeah, as a starting point, it's not too bad, because they're gonna resist it.
Oh yeah.
But that's if the setting really supports it. I mean, obviously, playing a game of modern day Call of Cthulhu, it's probably not the best start. Maybe I don't know.
I mean, you could start a modern Call of Cthulhu game with the investigators having already been captured by the cult and awaiting sacrifice, and they have to escape.
Yeah,
and then figure out what to do.
Of course, if the escape is part of the adventure and then the options are laid out properly, then yeah.
Really, though, I think if you're setting up an imprisonment kind of a thing, and you don't have it as part of the and it's not part of the adventure, then probably best not to do it. If that's just how you're going to start the campaign, and you don't have any, like I was saying earlier, have a plan to get out first.
Kabuki Kids mentioned, I mean, obviously the quite an infamous AD&D adventure. It's A4, not A1. It's in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords. Have any of you three played that one?
No.
It's not a campaign starting adventure. It's actually the finale for that particular series, and it's designed for characters really sort of. It says level 4 to 7. I would suggest levels 4 and 5 don't apply. But they start in pitch black, wearing nothing but loincloths, with no items, no spells memorized, no light source, no nothing. All they know is that the whole area doesn't feel all that unstable because a volcano is about to blow up. So off they go. But the characters do know each other, though they've been adventuring. The idea is that they've been adventuring together and been captured at the end of A3, which is one of the reasons why A3 is not such a good module, because it is.
Here come the bots.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yes. Yeah. Make sure I don't click on Squirrel Hermit again. Block the user. Bye XX69 beers. But A4, it works as a great one shot, and it works as a great sort of finale to that series. It is an unusual challenge, and it really sort of takes the players out of their comfort zone, because at that point, obviously, the idea is they've been playing characters that are very competent, level 5, 6, 7 characters. By this time, mages will have fireballs, and your level 7 fighter might be attacking 3 times every 2 rounds.
You're taking away the toys, yeah.
Yeah, all the toys have been stripped away, and suddenly they're fighting with thigh bones, or they're having to take off their loincloths and fill them with sand and stones to use them as a blackjack or a sling. They might be hitting something with a kobold skull. It's great.
He's going to be mocking the monk then.
No, exactly. It's a tournament adventure. None of the tournament characters are monks, but it would be a monk's paradise, that adventure. But of course, a monk has to be human, so they're going to need a light source.
Right.
But there are ways of finding light sources. There are fire beetles you can dismember. There's tar you can find, as long as you can find a way of lighting it. Dip a chunk of wood in it and wrap it with something, and if you can find a way of lighting it, great. But yes, suddenly diseased kobolds become a dangerous proposition for sixth level characters.
Oh God, yeah.
But
Squirrel Hermit survived.
that's a reference to the bots. But yes, but I mean the A series, it's a tournament series, so you can forgive those issues for tournament use.
Do you know? Because they reprinted it in the super module against the slavers. Did they change anything? I haven't read the super module, but did they change anything to adjust from tournament mode?
They did add a bit of material to link the adventures a little bit better, and then they rebadged it as level 7 to 10 or 8 to 10, because for campaign purposes the adventures are quite difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from that, they didn't fix the issues. They didn't fix the problems with A3 at all, and they're still expected to add to have that awkward ending to A3 into A4. A0 was there was a super module called Against the Slave Lords, which was just A1 to 4 with added material, and then it was a later re-release just called Slavers, which added in A0.
Yeah, that was for the reprints that they did, the Gygax reprints. Yeah, I have that one.
And A0 is quite good. It's not perfect, but it's got a nice old school feel to it. It just doesn't do the job of linking to the rest of the campaign adventures very well, because it's really designed for I would say level 1, it's a bit tough. Level 2 characters, level 3 characters may be about right, but if your characters are level 4 going into A1, they're going to die. It's quite simple as that. I've run that series. I had to add in quite a lot of extra material between A0 and A1 just to get the characters to the degree of competence that they could survive in slave pits of the Undercity.
I think A0 even says that. Like in the end, it says don't go right into the slavers, but it seeds it for later.
Yeah. For that purpose, I mean, it's a little underwhelming for the purpose of starting off the campaign, but it's a decent adventure. It's a decent adventure by itself. Apart from the way they portray the main bad guy is pretty abysmal. That's the weakness of it. But the actual adventure's fine, absolutely fine. Anyway, and I sort of interrupted Saxius on a roll, and I've been waffling on for the last 15-20 minutes. Any more sort of campaign starts that you tend to use, Saxius?
Well, the big one is really like once it's established, like what sort of not setting, but like what tone the group is going for. That is really the big tell for me. I mean, as I said, I came in an hour late because another guy that I know, him and we've decided that we're going to do a 1 DM, 1 player game where if you die, you become the DM and then you switch.
Oh, right.
And we've then decided that that's what we're going to do. And we've been spending the time setting all of this up. And I now know we have got a wizard. He is going to be of a minor noble background. He is in a Mediterranean environment. He's of Balkan/Russian background for his character. And he is on the run. And he's hiding here and trying to make a living working as, well, a wizard or a scholar. Or just anyone who can read and write, really. And it's in the equivalent of like late 700s. That right there is telling me a good deal of things I can do for introducing him to this world. He's going to maybe having to deal with nobility, the differences of the high and lower classes. He's going to have to be, the one that they will send out to make sure that the thugs acquire the right things. He's going to, look to make sure that he's got enough money to maintain his lifestyle because he's a nobleman. So these are already challenges I'm looking at and going like, right, I can build on that. I can do an introduction for that. And the very beginning is going to be, here is where you live, here is the people you work with, and now let's sort of like go into like the introduction of like, here are some potential jobs or adventure, not adventure, so to speak, jobs that he can engage in. So yeah, for me it really is down to the group and what they're willing to sort of do and what they're willing to go in for. But then again, I say that, and I managed to sell my real life group on Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. So I don't know if it's because I'm a great snake salesman or snake oil salesman or what it is.
I guess sort of. I mean, that's very much sort of like late Dark Ages, isn't it? Very early medieval. So you've got things like a hierarchy within the earls and the dukes potentially, and issues with local rulers rather than regional rulers, potentially. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does sound interesting.
So we're already starting off with the potential of both a little bit of political intrigue, but not to the point of where we're looking at it being Game of Thronesy. It's still with the whole thing of like, he is still going to be the middleman between the people of the court and the bailiff and his people going out and doing their work. So he's still going to have to go out and do some actual work there, and that's what I'm sort of like currently brewing, because I won the coin toss on being the DM. So I'm going to see what I can do to him, and we'll take it from there. We're only using like basic fantasy, so watered down first edition.
Is it going to be difficult to get suitable sort of scenarios prepped though for a single character using basic fantasy type rules with a very low power level?
Yeah. So normally it would be it's something that definitely needs to be considered. So I'm not going to be thinking, okay, we've got, him, a bunch of NPCs going out and doing adventuring. We're definitely going to be looking at a lot more focused on the character and what he does.
Yeah.
So it's a change in some of the focus, but I am of the school, in case no one has picked up on this. I'm still of the school of thought that the world will move on whether or not you want it to. So I'm not going to accommodate. I'm not going to hold back on the punches when it comes to things like there is a goblin attack. The player's probably not going to want to stand there and be the one holding them back, because that's going to be suicide. But if he's rallying and working with other NPCs, then the focus is the big battle is going to be a background thing, and then what he does and what the side things that he can accomplish, that becomes the focus point for that. It just means that you have to bear in mind where the focus is going to be. So if a big event takes place, focus on the small parts that the player can do, and the other things will be background. And if it's going to be a case of he decides to go into, for example, the forest, then at that point it's going to be more of a case of, all right, there can be warning signs. He can hear things. You still have got a wisdom, intelligence, all of these other things that a character can use and roll in order to make their way around. But this is then a challenge for me as a DM to make sure that I drop the appropriate hints and I give options, and the other player then also takes the opportunity to think creatively outside of the box, because with limitations you've got to think creatively. And for a beginning, that definitely would be meaning that with him and I, we've got to really sort of downscale what we normally throw at characters, and then what we would normally throw at characters would be major encounters that you might even have to sneak around, or you would have to be clever and get around it. If you know that they are drinking out of a well, and you've got the capability of poisoning that without being seen, well, that's a great way of leveling the playing field if you are going to be approaching it that way. Go on.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot more. And I mean, L is pointing out in the chat that the basic fantasy is basic. It's got very it's a skeleton of a system, but the other guy and I, we've both got at least 10 years of DMing, so we've quickly zoomed through both of our house rules and gone, this is what we want, and we've made a document where we've documented all of that. So we're both going to sit with the exact same set of rules, exact same agreements and outlines. And then everything else from there is just going to be the first edition method of, you want to do something, roll it against your stat and justify it.
Well, I was just going to bring up one of El's comments actually regarding starting a game at a funeral.
I tried that once, but all the other attendees got offended, so I had to give that up.
I know I have a a specific module where you do that. Warhammer 40,000.
Don't worry, Sean, I got your joke.
It flew straight over my head.
He tried starting a game at a funeral, but all the other attendees got offended.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Sean, okay. Well, okay.
I mean, if it's at my funeral, chances are somebody's probably got dice in their pocket anyways.
No, exactly.
I've actually told my wife I want my ashes made into a set of dice to go to my gaming group.
Oh, wow. Very nice. A little morbid, but very nice.
I also told her if you can swing it, I give you full permission to make my knuckle bones into actual dice.
Oh.
Not that I think any mortuary in America would allow for that.
Yes, and what we'd like to do with the body, just flay the flesh off his knuckles and give me the bones, please. What?
As my children inherit my set of D&D books rebound in my own flesh, I don't know.
Hey, it's the real Necronomicon. It's all about the proper presentation. Like, here it is, and here's the one.
It's the Immunomicon. But
oh, good God. Get back on topic, everyone.
Yes.
That'll start an adventure. To the court system, but...
Anyways, where were we now? We were on about starting at the funeral. Yeah, I have a adventure that does start at the funeral. It's the players are meant to be high level. A cardinal has died, and they are meant to be attending his funeral, which is a big event, and it's also where they're meant to be introduced to other characters. And later on, there's an assassination attempt that so it turns into like a what's it called? Not a murder mystery, but you have to stop the murder from happening. So a lot of court intrigue with that, but it all begins at the funeral. And it's something you can introduce for as a one shot, like, here's high level, here you go.
Right. And so you hang on. I'm trying to work this out. Is the time travel involved somehow?
In this game?
Yeah.
No. I've missed out some key details. I've missed out some key details. Cardinal's dead.
Yeah.
You're attending his funeral, but there has to be a replacement for the cardinal. The candidate for that is up for being potentially murdered, and you learn of that, and you have to stop that from happening as it's taking place during the wake.
I thought you were saying that you had to go back in time to stop the cardinal thing.
Oh no, I've done that to my players, and funnily enough, I've made the players go back in time, sabotage something, travel back in time, and be told that the thing that they sabotaged was the same thing that killed another player's character in an earlier session. So that was because that player had a tendency of liking a certain evil god, and ergo, it was another group's decision that we must assassinate him by going back in time and stopping him. By setting up the most elaborate trap possible.
While I haven't started at a funeral, I have started campaigns in a festival, an event.
I saw your comment on that. I was just going to come to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Festivals
it can be fun.
Good.
It's a great way to give the characters and the players chances to interact with the world
Yes.
Also, festivals often attract people from around the area and even from far and wide. So it's also a way to give them a glimpse of what could be in the world. It's like, oh, and over there, there's these, owlbear, skin wearing barbarians who are plying their wares. It's like,
The first campaign I ever ran for 5th edition, I did start writing it up, but I'd like to actually try and convert it to an old school system. I think it would work better with an old school system. Plus, I prefer the mechanics in an old school system. But that one began with all of the player characters. The intro was that your characters have seen posters advertising a festival that sounds interesting, and they've all travelled to this town, village, whatever you would call it, only to find that the festival is actually not particularly interesting, and the village is a bit of a hole, to be honest. And that's how they get to know how they know each other, in that they've basically spent almost every evening in the pub together. A group of outsiders, amongst not many outsiders, have actually bothered to go to this festival. And the idea is they eventually do something that offends the villagers, causes them to miss the one boat that leaves the next morning, and they're stuck in this place.
getting glimpses of folk horror here.
There were certainly some sort of fairly horrific elements there would be if I rewrote it all for old school stuff.
Isn't that how the Wicker Man starts?
I was about to say, did somebody construct a big wooden man there?
No, there was none. No, I actually hadn't thought of the Wicker Man when I made it, but I could certainly make it more Wicker Man-ish. But the idea is that they've got to try and save the villagers from the evil influence that is affecting the town that's caused it to be the miserable place that it is. But it's getting the realization there that the villagers are actually completely innocent. They're not really in on anything bad, but there's something that's controlling the village that's got them all a little bit brainwashed.
Well, holidays and celebrations and stuff are just useful all around. You can have it go so many different ways. Everybody can be having fun, and then suddenly the big bad evil guy shows up and makes haha, I'm here for what is mine, kind of entry sort of thing. You can get your whole kidnapped villager or a raid on the village. Like what happens when, the Duke's men come in and decide to, take away all the able-bodied men of the village for whatever reason. There's your call to adventure, but it starts out fun enough, quaint enough, or, you cross the wrong NPC. Next thing you know, there's honor at stake, or a contest, or I challenge you to go to the peak over there. It can go in so many different directions. It can, you can get pickpocketed and catch somebody and find out that there's a reason. I mean, it's a great start. So,
with mine, I mean, I've run the intro to it 3 times. The first 2 times it was ever so easy to ensure the party did something that annoyed the villagers. I had a pickpocketing where they tried to do the right thing and step in to stop the thief getting away, and the villagers got annoyed that because it's a very strict regime in the village, and that's the guard's job. It's not your job to do that. And they were locked up for questioning to find out how they dared to get involved. And the other group was the easiest group was the first group I ever ran through it. They were just drinking in the inn, and one of the characters was downing loads of beer because she was bored. And I said, okay. She said, oh, something's knocking on the window trying to attract your attention. She says, "Oh, I'm going to go outside and find out." Says the cold night air hits you in the face. Can you make me a constitution check, please? And she failed dismally. I said, the cold night air hits you. You stagger forward, and you face plant in and throw up in the village's sacred fountain. And it was easy to get that. That was easy. But the third group, it wasn't quite so easy because I had a bit of an awkward player who refused to get remotely invested in the villager's plight. We've all had players like that from time to time. He was in a mood with me because I hadn't allowed him to play an evil paladin.
If you're evil, you're not a paladin.
You could be an anti-paladin, but
I had specifically said this is a fairly short campaign. I'm filling in for another DM. I haven't got time to prepare anything else. We're going to run this. Can you all make generally good aligned characters who are willing to help? And he turned around and says, "Oh, but I want to play a chaotic evil paladin."
Yes, thank you very much for your time.
He wasn't with that group for very long.
Like I said, here's the door. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
But I'll say that. I mean, I thought that made an interesting start. But obviously, the DM is just in that one. You've just got to. I just had to weed a little bit to make sure that they did something that offended the slightly uptight villagers.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes it's also the beginning also starts out with the players have to come in with the understanding that there is a buy-in. I think at least Elfbait has mentioned that on several times. There's got to be a buy-in from the players to also sort of be invested into the game, and that comes with the understanding that the DM's going to pitch you something. You as the group are going to go, all right, we are going to bite because it's the beginning, and we are going to see where this takes, and we'll sort of snowball from there.
Yes,
but it's always going to be that initial thing.
Very rarely does the dissenting player work out. So
yeah.
No, I mean that dissenting player has often shown a few red flags and other games as well.
Sometimes you look out and you get a Bilbo in your dwarf game, but
yeah.
Sometimes that is the case, yeah.
But most of the time, it's just an idiot who needs to be told to get lost.
Yep. Sometimes you get the dragonborn tea merchant in your children who grew up in this village campaign. That's what happened in mine.
Oh, right.
He's also the player who absolutely imploded on me. I've mentioned him a few times, but yeah.
Yes.
But yeah. That was like, all right. I thought we had an agreement. I mean, sometimes it's the other player, like one of my regular players, the guy who every group wants. Every D&D, every game of group of gamers needs this guy, the guy who will play anything. And my buddy Scott is that way, and he'll play anything. But in the nautical campaign, I'm like, all right, we're going to be doing a nautical campaign. He's like, I want to make a paladin who wears chainmail, and I'm like, why is your paladin traveling the high seas with a bunch of ne'er-do-wells?
Taking us back to a previous stream, this sort of thing is why what is now known as a session 0 is useful, because it is the time when the DM says, okay, this is what I want from the group, and here's your basic information. Now make characters together to fit this this setting.
Yeah, in both instances, we did have a session 0, but making characters together was not really in the cards, considering they were kind of online games. But
you can still make them on. You can. Still.
Nobody wants to sit there online and play a game, make a character.
Yeah, but even so, you can still set the parameters, even if they're making the characters together. The parameters are laid out. And...
They were laid out.
It's just they get ignored, don't they? Yeah,
exactly. And while I could sit there and say come back later, I'm also the kind of DM who will try to make it work if I can. And so, like the Dragonborn tea merchant, I'm like, all right, you got to tell me why it is that you're here and how you connect with the rest of the characters. And he was able to put in the extra legwork to do so. So I let him play it.
Yeah.
And then the paladin on the ocean, I'm like, all right, you realize, of course, if you go into the drink wearing chainmail, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I won't wear it while I'm on deck. I'm like, okay, I'm going to remember that. So when you sit there, run out there and decide to go melee, you're wearing what?
Yep.
But no, I mean, he had a good reason. He's like, I went out with this crew because my order's sacred texts are lost somewhere out there in the seas. I'm like, all right, I don't need a huge backstory. That's good enough. You have a call to adventure. Let's make it work. And it was fun. I mean, it was fun. But man, when somebody shows up to your game like that, you're just like, we had an agreement. That there was a plan.
Plans don't always survive exposure to the player characters, do they?
The game I ran for my kids, like the very first 5th edition game, the one with the prison cart, I'm like, there are no Dragonborn in this campaign setting. And one kid shows up and he's like, I want to play a Dragonborn barbarian. I'm like, but there's not any. All right, let's make it work, because I didn't want to make him not play D&D.
Yeah. With kids, yeah.
In that case, I consider that a success, because but after we were done talking about it, I had a new part of my campaign setting that made sense.
Right.
You know, so I'm like, all right, cool. Give it a chance. That's why I believe in always trying to give it a chance.
If you can fit it in, fair enough.
Yeah,
and I think you've got to give a little bit of extra leeway to the youngsters.
I mean, if I tell you we're playing Middle Earth and you're like, I'm going to play a tiefling, I'm like, no.
Yes.
Exactly.
The hell you are.
I mean, with my Middle Earth games, I've basically at least it's attracted people who have got some interest in the setting. And when I've said to them, okay, you can play any of the Manish cultures from west of the Misty Mountains, you can play an elf passing through, you can play a dwarf passing through, you can play a hobbit, because we'll be starting in the Shire, any type of hobbit. But no, you will not be playing an Easterling. You will not be playing a Corsair. You will not be playing a Haradrim.
What?
That's it. I'm out of here.
I'm sorry. What kind of pitch is this?
You can play an Eriadorian. You might be able to play someone from Gondor who has travelled up. That's not too far away.
That's when Eli showed up with his Woz's player. His Woz's character.
No. And if someone's chosen to play a Rohirrim, no, you don't then go and pick a Woz, because they hate each other. I'm not having that. I'm not having that. And Woz is staying there in Vaughan. Very few ever come out. And no, definitely no Umley. no Dual-Lumin, no Umley.
I'm
Weren't
sorry.
they made up from that?
You've lost 3 of your 3 players right there. There you go. I can't play an Easterling. Can't play an Haradrim. I'm out.
If we play in Rovanian, then yes, you can have potentially an Easterling. But then you're not going. If you're playing in Rovanian, you're not going to play someone from Eriador. Sorry.
That's perfectly fine. I'd like to be playing during the time when the Haradrims comes and pays a lovely little visit to Gondor. See, we can make this work.
How dare you? How dare you honor geography of Tolkien?
Of course, Gondor's a little way to the south, so yeah, you might get the Harad is not that far from Gondor potentially, because there's a lot of sea trade. Yeah, I'd allow a man from Harad, but I wouldn't allow a Lossoth if you're down in Gondor. No,
I think Malaki has won in the comments.
He wants to play Balrog.
There you go.
I'll play Balrog.
Listen, we can make that work. We just need to go very deep into Moria.
Well, Gygax did have a player playing a Balrog, so in one of his campaigns. So I guess there's precedent.
Only if you can pronounce it correctly. You have to roll that R.
Balrog.
No.
Our rolling and roticisms don't go at all together. So,
all right,
sorry.
we're going back on topic now. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you.
Well, technically, it was about starting games, because of course the monkey wrench player always throws a monkey wrench in the starting of the game.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, like, you know, I'm you're kinder than me in that. And when I set a restriction, it's like, nope, you know, and I just shake off the whining. But I had a point. Where was I going with that? I'm getting old. Yeah, no,
it's also setting up, you know, the world itself, because just opening up the floodgates and basically going, you could be anything. It's like, well, as you said, you know, honor the geography of Tolkien, or the geography of your world. To use, for example, my second edition group, you know, yes, we had a group of people that were a little bit all over the place. One was from the Empire of the Necromancers, one is from, you know, the Kingdom of the Elves. We then had, you know, 2 dwarves from the dwarven strongholds and so on. But they all had the requirement of, you have to explain why you are here in this town where we are beginning, because that's what we've picked as a group. Why are you here? The elf went, well, is there a college of magic? I would have gone there for education. Right, there we go. You've been to the nearby capital town. This is the nearest town where there isn't a wizard. You're now moving in and you're trying to start your trade there as the local wizard. Bam, done. Next. Oh, I'm actually a refugee from the Necromancer Empire because they financially indebt you to their system and indoctrinate you, and I really don't want to be that. It's like, yep, there we go. Brilliant. Then that way we've got reasons for why they are from different parts of the world, but that's because they, as the players, have put in the legwork to explain how they got there, why they're there, and why they are going to stay there, and then, at the very least, at the very beginning.
That's players engaging with the setting as well. So.
Exactly. And like there were still areas where I would have had to turn around and say, no, I'm not going to let you be from here. You know, I'm not going to have players from one of the kingdoms called a Cooper, which is straight up on the other side of the entire continent. I was like, no, there is no reason why you would be from that region, because you would have to travel across an entire continent. And I don't mean like a small amount. I mean from sea down to the Necromancer Empire, across the jungles of the Necromancer Empire, oversea, up again, past the orc hordes, and it was just very disbelievable. Whereas a refugee nobleman running away from the Necromancer Empire, all right, yeah, we can make that do. Burning off the bridges and burning their fortunes to get away to live, that is something that could be understandable, and it would also explain, you know, their general character and their strong, you know, personality. So that was something there. But again, that geography is there.
Yeah. And
especially when you're setting the precedent of saying there's no tieflings in this world, or if they are NPCs. Right there, that's a precedent where the players have to all say, right, here is what we are not able to do, and there's going to be a reason for that. And ideally, all of them will then do the buy-in of agreeing to that.
I'm just going to add a 5th person to the stream. I've just seen a familiar form appear in the green room, and that is Mr.
Halakar.
Hello, Halakar.
Good evening. This is such a good topic. I had to leave work early so I could get home and get on for the end. The joys of being salary.
Yes. So, anything we've not touched on that you want to bring up, Halakar?
Overall, I think it's been a really good discussion tonight. I've mentioned before in some of the chats that my group is starting out as teenagers in a village when a natural disaster happens, and they all get the chance to become heroic. And they will basically, what the 0 level is going to do is get them their basic starting equipment and money, so they're ready at 1st level to be 1st level characters.
I think you mentioned before, but what 0 level mechanics are you using? Are they the ones from the Greyhawk Adventures, or are they more similar to Treasure Hunt's 0 level?
Similar mechanics? To Treasure Hunt. The Greyhawk Adventure ones, I read over them once, and they seem pretty complicated. Basically, they're starting at negative 1,500 experience, and they're what I did, I don't know how familiar you are with the Cavalier from Unearthed Arcana,
Yes,
but
yeah.
for all of their physical stats, they get to roll a percentage, and each level they earn percentage points to increase their stats.
Yep.
I've got the same thing going with my 0 level characters. Every 300 experience, they get 2 to 20 percentage points that they can split up however they want among their statistics. Because I just gave them 4d6. You pick the order, so they're not powerful. I mean, the one who wants to be a cleric, his highest score is a 14. So
that's fine. I mean,
yeah,
especially in AD&D, a cleric with 14 wisdom still gets the odd bonus spell.
right.
Yeah, you got 2
It's
first level spells.
perfectly fine.
So yeah, every they'll get a chance to get 10 to 100 percentage points to spend. So if they roll really well and want, they can concentrate them all in one stat and raise it a point before they get to first level. Just 2 weeks ago, they had their first combat with something fairly tough. There were 5 of them that were there that night, and they got into a fight with 3 giant ants. And, you know, they scraped through by the skin of their teeth.
That's a tough encounter for a group of first level characters, because giant ants have got a good AC. They deal out decent, not massive damage, but solid damage. 2 hit dice, I believe. And
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a challenge for a first level party.
And they live in a. I told them the town they live in. Think of the old TV show Little House on the Prairie. It is agricultural. You have access to no weapons other than pretty much everybody has a utility knife, a hunting knife. There is no armor. So you can modify your pitchfork, or you can use your dagger. Anybody can make a sling or a club or a staff, and that's what you've got. So they're working their way through. They did the natural disaster that happened is a flood. They don't know why the flood happened yet, but there was a big flood, and part of the intro, if you want to call it that, is the mayor will tack up assignments on the door of the town hall. Anybody that wants to do these things, this is stuff we need to do. So they decided to explore along the shore downstream to see if they could recover anything that had washed up, and they found a longsword, which it didn't belong to anybody in town, so they were allowed to keep that. And they found a box that had 8 flasks of oil in it. So I've got a budding pyromaniac in the group that wants to burn everything. That's part of what helped them with the ants.
That's a go-to for low-level parties, isn't it? Flaming oil.
Flaming oil, guard dogs, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, they're so far they're doing pretty well.
Now, I mean, I've seen people complain. I mean, I've had issues with the Cavalier character class, and I've had a Cavalier running like a juggernaut through a campaign before. But there's one thing I don't mind about it, and that is the stat development side of it. Because even though people say, "Oh, their stats get really, really high," they don't. Because if you work it out, they're going to gain roughly 1 point in the relevant stats over a course of 10 levels if they roll average. Mm-hmm. It's not rapid. It's not rapid at all. So I don't have too much of an issue with that. The issues with the Cavalier mainly stem from the expectations of the setting, and having to shoehorn that sort of that cultural aspect into the setting. You've got to have that aspect of chivalry in there, and the idea of the social class side of it to make the Cavalier work, and it doesn't fit every game. And if they survive, if they're playing them properly, it's hard for them to survive. But if they do survive, they become absolute units by about level 3 or 4. Once they've got a decent suit of armor, they can just barrel through most things on level.
Speaking from experience, yes.
I saw Roland just put in chat about using a hand axe. Yes, actually, one of the characters, in order to determine who they are, they roll their secondary skill, and I have an extended secondary skill table. And I have one of them who was a forester, so he's the carpenter's son in order to kind of fit in. And yes, he does use a hand axe, but it's not a combat style hand axe, so it's at a -1 to hit because it's not quite balanced right.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up my just looking in Discord because my group have been making their characters for Treasure Hunt, and I've had them roll on the basic in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the basic sort of professions table for what they start as, and we've got where are they? One who's a teamster, one who's a trader, who happens to be the one with the lowest charisma, one with a gambler background, which I think could be interesting, one that's managed to roll 2 backgrounds. I haven't checked to see what other ones he's got, and the other one is a sailor. So, which for Treasure Hunt, that'll work quite nicely.
Yeah. Otherwise, they have to depend on that NPC to get off the island.
Yeah, and I'm waiting to see what they come up with for that. Hopefully, they're not watching this stream. Hopefully.
Now there are things that come up in my group. The first 20 days are on a day-by-day basis. Different things are going to happen. And part of it is reconstruction of the town. And there's a group that's coming in that's from one of the bigger cities that's trying to rebuild the bridges. And they only get so far and realize they don't have enough iron goods. So they stop in this town of Sandfords to cast nails and make hinges and flanges and all that kind of stuff. And the PCs can help. And if they do that, they will earn 1/3 of the skills needed to gain blacksmith as a secondary skill. So then there are other things they can do before they hit first level. So they can, they have the opportunity to develop forestry, carpentry, and blacksmith as a secondary skill if they don't really like the one that they were born into.
Well, yeah, that's great because that gets them involved in the character development. They feel like they're progressing, which is what you want. I mean, especially with low level characters, 0 level characters, you've got to have that feeling of, yes, you're starting at a very, very mundane level, but you've got to keep the progression interesting. You've got to feel like they're developing something, and you've got to get the pace right to keep it interesting. Because it can be a bit soul destroying if you're stuck as an absolute weakling for a long time.
Yeah, I found I have to pare back. One of the things that happens, since there's no trade coming in, this town doesn't produce enough food to feed everybody. So they start running into problems with starvation. So the characters have to hunt, trap, gather, and all that. And the system I had for that it's just taken way too long. So I had to streamline that some.
Yeah. And
one of the things they're running up against is they are teenagers. So their parents might tell them, no, you can't do that. You know, if it's something they think is too dangerous. So what they're doing, they don't realize they're doing this. They are earning what I termed valor points. And there are 7 different criteria. And if they get a valor point in each one of those criteria, then someone from town that they have helped is going to put up to the town council, hey, why don't we emancipate them, have them declared as adults because they have done all these adult things. Cool. So that's going to be one of the rewards they get that they don't even know they are earning at the time.
Nice.
Freedom from their parents.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
it's funny. I had to have that in my game. My wife's character is the daughter of the innkeeper, and when she decided to start adventuring, there was this role play moment with her parents where she's like, her mother's like, I knew this day was going to come at some point because she was an adventurer and the character's grandfather was an adventurer. She's like, and it was so funny because it paralleled all those teenagers. Like, if you're going to do it, be safe, kind of a thing.
Hey, I got that talk from my parents too.
Another one from L here. Worlds connected at starting towns, planescape, connected dimensions, etc. I have never used this with a fantasy campaign. The nearest I've ever got is running a the Horror on the Orient Express, where it does dive into the dreamlands occasionally. But I've never attempted anything planescapey. That's never really interested me. I like things to be a little bit more grounded on the prime material plane.
I had a fantastic plan set up to do just that in a group I played in back in college. Outside of the city of Greyhawk, there's the ruins of, I think it's Castle Mauve or something like that. Anyways, there's a smaller one besides Castle Greyhawk. So in that, there was a big inlaid design on the floor that was set up like a compass with 8 different points, but it was missing the stone that goes in the point of each one. And they were going to be able to find these stones, and each one they put in would open up a portal. And they were going to be able to go to a Gamma World setting, a Boot Hill setting, a Star Frontiers setting, basically all the other TSR games that I had. And of course, they just totally missed this. They found some of the gems, didn't know what they were, sold them. So, all the prep work went to the side. But it's in my mind, it was going to be amazing.
Never done
This
that.
makes me think of Mario 64, where you open up all the different worlds you can go into.
Never done that in a hometown, but no. I do have like fast travel ability in my campaign, but it's out of the way. Like you have to go kind of into places you don't normally want to go to get it done. So, and they don't always work. So.
And
I like unreliable shortcuts.
I concluded my second ed campaign with a dimension hop, but I don't like Geek. I don't like it as a regular thing, except for Malachi coughing about rifts. That's different. Rifts is designed around the dimensional hopping, sort of like.
If design can even be applied to that giant splat book of a game.
I've never played it, but I had a friend who absolutely loved it.
No, I loved it. One of my favorite characters is absolutely absurd. He is a mutant panda using the TMNT rules with the Mystic China martial arts abilities.
Kung Fu Panda.
This is well before Kung Fu Panda, but he walked around wearing the classic big old straw hat of badassitude from all the Kung Fu movies, and he carried a giant stone pillar as his weapon because mega damage. It's like, and it's just Rifts it's so absurd. I think we got one of our favorite gaming group quotes was "I'll take him in hand-to-hand combat" when the ex-coalition guy in the group in his UAR-1 big old mecha suit, we encountered these 3 giants, and he ran out of ammo. And he's like, "Don't worry, guys, I'll take him in hand-to-hand combat," and then they just kicked his mecha butt. In like 2 turns.
All this is going because I've never played any Palladium,
all you have to know is, as absurd as everything I just said, that is the game.
Yeah, that's pretty normal, bog standard Rifts.
Yeah, that is the game. Your party's going to be a Cyanite, a Veritech pilot from Macross, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, some wizard with cybernetics, an AI from the old Empire of Atlantis.
Well, my friend was a shark human crossbreed that was some kind of cleric, and he was just incredibly powerful. He fought something and got whatever the equivalent of a critical hit is, and basically pulled the Predator move. He grabbed him by the spine and ripped his spine and skull out of his body, and then used that as a club on one of the other guy's friends.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway,
yeah.
But it's supposed to be ridiculous. My current party in my game just this Monday found an item that would potentially allow them to travel the planes if they wanted to. And I actually got to paraphrase the Han Solo quote on making the jump to hyperspace to them. I'm like, traveling the planes isn't so easy, kid.
Isn't dust and crops.
You might bounce too close to the abyss or find yourself in the middle of the elemental plane of fire, and that'd end your trip real quick.
John is blinking and nodding. Just blink and nod. Eventually, they'll talk D&D again. Blink and nod.
This was D&D.
There's one guy in my group who's a fan of Planescape, and Planescape just came too late for me. I drifted out of the gaming scene when that came out, and I'm not sure it would have been my sort of game anyway. I remember opening up Monster Manual 2 and when first seeing Modrons and thinking, what the hell? And to know there was a setting based around all that sort of stuff, it probably would have made me go, huh. Because I like things that I like things to be quite focused. And when I was playing then, though, I wasn't creating any of my own worlds or anything. I was just using Greyhawk. I was quite boring like that. I was just using Greyhawk. Now I'm creating my own worlds. I'm a little bit more open to different ideas and different interpretations, but my worlds do tend to be based on something I can relate to. But that's just the way I am. Just the way I am.
Yeah, this current game I'm running, I'm intentionally trying to be a little bit more fantastic than I tend to run, because I realized for decades I ran really like low fantasy, low magic D&D, and I'm like, I'm really not using a huge chunk of what is out there and the vast potential of the game. So I've kind of tried to change this one up, especially considering 5th edition is so out of whack anyways. So
What's
I'm
this
letting
noble
Edition
Conan?
out of whack?
I'm letting non-magical things have some magic-like effect in my game. Like the giant ants, they end up being the reason for the flood because there were giant beavers that had dammed off this lake. Well, there's a force controlling these giant ants that got them to burrow underneath the dam, and it collapsed, and that caused the flood. So they're eventually going to have to take out a whole colony of giant ants.
well, that's
But
just
one of the
fantastic
things-
ecology, though. I mean, that's not necessarily magic.
Well, but it gets to it. One of the things, if they do it right, they will find they'll go in a cave that'll have a pool of brine. The part of Michigan we live in is where Dow Chemicals started. Herbert Dow drilled, brought up underground brine, and then converted it into all sorts of chemicals. One of the things you can get from brine is boric acid, and they use boric acid to kill insects because it weakens their carapace to the point that they will basically come apart. They'll pop. So if they decide to do some alchemical study, they will be able to use this stuff to basically take out the ants without having to face them in combat. Or they can, since they're in the middle of a big forest, they can use pitch, oil, sap, and tar, and dump it down the hole and do like the experiment they show on YouTube where they dump the molten aluminum down the anthill, and it makes these really cool sculptures. So they have the ability to mimic certain magic things if they think of it. They're getting no hints about this. Just like there are 2 different ways they could make armor, but none of them have thought of it because they've got a blacksmith. They could get a whole bunch of washers and sew them on a shirt and have poor man's scale mail. Or they could go get they don't have any facilities big enough to boil large pieces of leather to make leather armor, but there is a boot maker who could boil 3-inch by 3-inch squares, and they could again make scale mail with boiled leather scales instead of steel scales. But none of them have thought of any of this, so it's been a moot point up to now.
I was just imagining the idea of pouring molten metal into an anthill and what the effect it would produce when there were lots of ants still in there when you poured the molten metal in. But maybe that's just...
Well, they die rapidly.
Oh yeah, they would. Yeah. I'm just imagining the effects on the sculpture you get afterwards. But anyway, going back to the idea of campaign starts and whatever. I gather we've all played a few modules in the past. Of all the modules you've played or read or run or whatever, a best and a worst start.
When I first started playing back in high school, they were all the worst start because we would show up, okay, you are at the gate of this dungeon, go. There was no transport, there was no travel. It was just, okay, yeah, we were in the Amidio jungle last week, but this week,
I haven't played too many modules.
I'm going to specifically say I think the worst start to a module that I can think of the top of my head and it's a shame because it's one of the best modules in terms of old school dungeon crawls, is I3 Pharaoh.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, railroading them. Yeah, they get shanghaied into the desert, and I was a big fan of that. I ran that, and I removed that entire concept, and they were there voluntarily, which oddly enough made them more engaged with the scenario.
Exactly. I think that's a Tracy Hickman adventure. Unsurprisingly, he went on to do Dragonlance. But the rest of the adventure is fantastic. It's just that introduction is absolutely abysmal. And you can almost say the intro to Ravenloft has got those sort of elements to it. It's just not as bad.
Well, yeah, you're pretty much kidnapped into the mist, but it's the whole thing. The magical mist swoops over, and bam, you're now in front of where you need to be. But that explanation, at least, it can be the whole. It's magic.
I think of the ones I've played, because I haven't played too many, but as much as I love Isle of Dread, the start of that is kind of weak. You just happen to have your papers all got wet, and you warmed them up, and it's got writing.
At least it's a little bit more engaging and a little bit more. I mean, the start to Pharaoh basically is you've all been found guilty of a crime you didn't commit, and a group of guards you could probably beat up because you're a decent level at this point have thrown you out of the city into the desert. Off you go.
Well, yeah, you've got a choice of death by hanging, death by fireball, death by lightning bolt. I remember the beginning of that module.
Yeah, I just feel like
grand adventure.
Like I said, I haven't played too many, but yeah, that's of the ones I played. That Isle of Dread is pretty weak because it just assumes your players have that whole instant. And there's so many better ways you can start, like a seafaring island adventure.
Just
as
going
good
to
of a pulp romp that it is.
Saxius is going to go, so give Saxius his chance to say "ta-ra" and say something to sign off with.
No, thank you very much again for having me, and thanks for the very engaging discussion. I'm hoping we've done some help for anyone starting their own campaigns or thinking of how they can help contribute with starting a great campaign. So, thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Cheers, Saxius.
Later.
Thank you.
So, I mean, there are a few other dodgy starts. I'm not a big fan of the start to B3 Palace of the Silver Princess. I think that's a bit of if any of you know that one. There's an odd red glow outside the castle. You've got to go into the castle because the red glow kills you. Yeah, great. Cheers.
So, if your players sit there and go, no, we're not going to retreat into the castle, adventure's over.
Basically, well, yeah, they're dead. Yeah.
I mean, when I ran that again, I had the players arriving to the Valley of Haven on unrelated issues, and they ended up splitting up. It's like half the group decided to go. It was a force field around the castle, but it wasn't killing anybody outside. It was just preventing entrance. And half the group said, okay, we're going to storm the castle. The other group, so we're going to deal with the humanoids in the valley. And so it turned out to be a fun little split adventure. But I hate railroad scenarios. I think that's like any module that says, okay, you are here, you are a captive and you are doing this, or you have said I3, you have been convicted, you are now here. Those bother me unless they're easily done away with, easily removed. Right?
Now, a slightly forced start is the one to B4, the Lost City, but I don't mind that because it starts with your low level, you're lost in the desert, food is running out. Oh, look, there's something ahead of you that might contain food or water, hopefully. Now, I don't mind that because it gives them a purpose.
That was one of my better starts, and it might just be nostalgia because that was one of the first modules I went through. We were caravan guards, and we didn't get lost in the desert. We got attacked by an Ifrit who caused a big windstorm that dispersed the caravan, and our little knot of characters just happened to be ones that stumbled upon each other after the storm, and then we had a common purpose of helping each other live, and that's when we got to
the Lost City.
The city, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
once
the way
we
of doing
started
it.
finding treasure, we forgot about the rest of the caravan. They can go pound sand for all we cared.
I often wonder if a lot of those weaker starts were done not necessarily intentionally, but I guess semi-intended. But they kind of figured that players and DMs are just going to kind of, with the whole module concept, we're just going to sort of mix and match these together and sew them together with into the fabric of their existing campaigns. And so, a strong beginning was sort of the least important part of the adventure in a lot of cases. So why put too much time into it? Because Isle of Dread, going back to that again, you can start that so many other ways. It could be a map found in a treasure chest. It could be some gap-toothed old beggar on the front of the the docks who's like, everybody knows that nobody takes him seriously, but he knows a thing. And you listen to him. There's just so many ways. I mean, how does Treasure Island start?
Well, how do you remember the old cartoon? Well, not really cartoon. It was a Sid and Marty Krofft show, Land of the Lost.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of how we ended up on the Isle of Dread.
I love that.
Big storm blew us up there. Only we didn't land where the villagers were. We were on the other side of the wall. So our first goal was to get to where the villagers were.
Yeah.
So it started out as I won't say a dinosaur hunt. It was more of a dinosaur flee, but. Yeah, that was how we got to the Isle of Dread when we ended up going through that.
Yeah. And it was mentioned earlier in the stream, there are several modules that can either lead into or after their, or can be a byproduct of Isle of Dread too. The slavers, when you escape that volcanic island,
Yep.
you could end up on the Isle of Dread as you drift ashore, or, the treasure hunt one, you were talking about earlier, that could be on the Isle of Dread, or once you're done there, Isle of Dread is the next island over.
Salt Marsh is right on the coast. Lendor Isle, the L1 and L2. There's a lot
my
of them.
current Isle of Dread campaign arc starts in Salt Marsh. It's like I'm going to start there and then eventually get to Isle of Dread, and then I mashed Isle of Dread up with a bunch of other stuff because I don't like the ending in Isle of Dread. So.
Brian just said in the chat that he's getting prepared to run Lost City himself.
Yeah. That is one of my favorites.
It's a great adventure, yeah.
I've seeded it so often, but nobody takes the bite.
Not only is it good in and of itself, it's so full of stuff to mine.
Yes.
I mean, and Watsy agrees too, because the Synedicians or Kinedicians or whatever, the people of the Lost City, they actually seeded them into a couple of 3rd edition adventures. In Dragon, you run into a pale white-skinned person in a cage, and they're actually from the Lost City originally, and stuff like that.
They're mad and they're wearing a mask. Yeah.
No, and this one, when you run into this one, they're just like an oddity, and it's an NPC that you're supposed to rescue, and you can. They drop a hint to the Lost City, but it's not part of the campaign. I think it's actually in the Savage Tides one they did, where they rewrote Isle of Dread into a romp that eventually takes you into the abyss with pirates. So,
my favorite item out of the Lost City was the urn that when you put something in it, it would automatically teleport to the treasure room in that pyramid. That saved us all sorts of encumbrance problems later on, because we just dump everything we found in that and then go back and collect it later. It got to the point where we would run a caravan to the city and back, as we had finished the city and we're off on our own, and they would just collect the stuff that we had dumped in from whatever module we were in.
There is so much adventure in that module. I mean, you got to get through the inverted pyramid first, and then there's a whole damn city down there.
Yeah, I mean, I've run big chunks of it, and I've been using the. I haven't actually played that one for a little while. We sort of drifted away to let another guy run a bit of a few adventures, but in terms of Goodman Games conversion, I thought that the work they did on the lower levels of the pyramid was very, very weak. and that part of the original module was very weak, very under fleshed out anyway. But I thought what they did on the city itself was excellent. So many, it turns into it's a proper sandbox when you get down there. There's so much to see and do and interact with it, and it can go in a lot of directions, which is great. It's just that those levels 6 through 10 of the pyramid are just such a wasted opportunity, I think.
Well, when I saw that, I thought, you know what, they just got tired. It's like, hey, you know what, here's a whole bunch of things, here's what can be in the rooms, why don't you be a good DM and flesh them all out yourself, because I have to get this off on the shelves as soon as I can.
Exactly. It's, I mean, to me, that bit feels like wasted pages in the module. I wish in the original B4, I wish they'd done a little bit more with the city itself and not really bothered so much with 6 through 10. Maybe put Zargon in the city or something.
Or just have hooks to it, like in Dwellers of the Forbidden City, where they say, you know, you could find this, you could find the intelligent orchids, and you could, you know, all that different stuff.
Yeah, that's why I hope it's not going to happen, but why I wish that Goodman Games could get Forbidden City, because of all those hooks in the back. They could do a whole second book just on that stuff.
I detailed a bunch of those, and I actually put all the creatures that I made up on the first edition D&D page. It's been a while now, but I had the, you know, several different growth stages of the orchids, and I had jungle ghouls, and there's a cat people, or a couple different things I put up on there. I don't know if you can search them or not, but you know, hey, take them. I put them up there for everybody to use.
I was gonna say, there's enough to that city. You could fit every one of those ideas in there and not have it feel crowded.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Actually, the adventure that I'm doing right now with the flood and the sand fords, once my group has gotten through at a certain amount, I'm going to type it all up, and I'm going to post that on that AD&D page also for anybody that wants it. Hey, take it, use it, do whatever you want. You know.
Which page is that?
The AD&D First Edition Facebook group.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The one? There's not multiples?
Oh, I'm sure there are, but that was the one where I stumbled across John when he had his the brackets to rate all the modules. That's what led me to your YouTube page.
That was about 3 years ago now I did all that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a few people who took part in that old voting thing have found their way to my channel. I'm glad people remember it, though. I was just sat bored at work one day, with no customers in the shop, thinking that magazine article was rubbish. I'm going to do something better.
Anybody that shows love to the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun, you've got my attention.
Yet another one I've picked up but haven't read or run yet.
It needs a little bit of work.
Grumpy Old Slan, when I get it done, I'm sorry, I'm responding to a chat here. When I get it done, give me your email. I've got to get a better version of PDF so I can put it all together with the maps and the drawings and stuff, and I'll just send it to you. Cool.
Well, what I was going to say then? where was I going then? Who knows?
Oh, we need to bring in Saxious to put you back on track, do we?
It's 11:30 here. My mind is.
We have to get him back on the railroad. Is that what's going on?
But no, I thoroughly enjoyed doing those polls all those years ago because I'd read I'd read a website that had talked about that Dungeon Magazine poll, and I thought, I'll have a look at that. And just read through it thinking, what a lazy piece of journalism.
Yes.
It was desperate. And I was thinking, all these, they've just shoved all the super modules at the top and all the famous stuff and slapped each other on the back.
Oh, the super modules. I heard when I was driving home and I was just listening, somebody was asking about the Scourge of the Slave Lords and if they had made changes.
Yeah,
one change they made is each of the original modules was supposed to have a new monster, so there was something that people didn't recognize. So you had the Cave Fisher and the Myconids and all that. and each one was supposed to have a new unique magic item. The only one I remember for sure is in A3. There was a Sword of Lions, which was a short sword that
Yes.
if it was sheathed, it made you invisible, and if you drew it, the blade itself was invisible, so it looked like you weren't holding anything. They took all those out. They took the special.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. That's a shame, because they were quite good. Some of those bits and bobs.
And they were each supposed to have a new trap, because again in A3 they had the Leyden jar, the big battery attached to the thing. If you grabbed it, it zapped you. Because we ended up trying to take that jar out of there. We were going to recharge it one way or another and use it, and then the slave lords captured us at the end and took all our stuff.
Yes. All right, Victor. Oh yes, Calstaff has reminded me about WG4. Now that's a module where talking about how to start adventures. It kicks off pretty much at the point where the party encounter a group of friendly gnomes in S4. Yes. That's the potential starting point for it. And I think it's quite a good start to WG4, because the idea is S4 is meant to be the sort of adventure where you conduct raids on the caverns, because they are very tough, and you explore the local area and you find these friendly gnomes, and you can rest up there, and once you've got their trust, they then tell you about issues they're having of their own, which then leads you into WG4 quite nicely. And the opening salvo of WG4, I think, is fantastic. Apart from the fact that the wilderness part of it is very forgettable. That's the bit that needs developing. S4's wilderness is fine. WG4's is just lazy. It's forgettable. But when you get to the temple and you have to conduct that initial entry raid on the temple in WG4, it's magnificent.
Yeah,
it really is. It's an adventure of two. It's an adventure of 3 parts. It's got a very, very forgettable wilderness section. It's got one of the most memorable battles that your players will ever have trying to get into the temple, and then it goes all Lovecraftian.
And, you touch the wall, and the name Tharizdun is brought to your lips unbidden. Yeah,
I think the bit where they just stumble on the brown mold, and they're in this creepy, nightmarish temple that's got more sort of atmosphere than deadly enemies by this point. And they're poking around, and suddenly all the heat is being drawn from their bodies. And there's just a patch of brown mold in the corner. You can really, but you get past that, and you find that it's the black cyst is behind there, isn't it? Behind that area. And if they try and go into that black cyst area,
and everything is cold there, mold or not. I mean, everything you have to. Your hand freezes to the thurible that you have to use to create the. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you always get the greedy player that tries to eat off one tree too many and ends up getting killed.
Oh, yeah. I had one of those. Yes.
Roll a reverse system shock roll. Yeah.
And it's like, what? Reverse system shock? Yes. So there's a bit where they have to pass. If they eat the fruit the first time, they gain. If they pass a system shock, they gain a point on the relevant skill. And there's a clue earlier on in the adventure as to which type of fruit affects which skill, so that's great. They can actually use it to boost their skill, boost their stats. But then if they try to eat a second one, they invert their system. So if they've got a 96% chance of passing the first one, they've got a 96% chance of failing the second one, which disintegrates them on the spot. Yeah, very, very evil, very, very evil, but glorious. It's brutal. It's glorious at the same time.
It's not fair. Instant death is not fair, man.
Don't be greedy. But no,
instant death after how many steps, though?
I
always have to kind of. I mean, what's funny is we're full of media. We watch media all the time where characters go through insta death, and I've never understood. It's like, look, the stuff you love that brought you to this game is full of that stuff.
Yeah, but it's not supposed to happen to them. They're protagonists.
Right. Yeah, I present you Walking Dead or Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, I mean, even well before that. I mean, this is like, different topic. I think people forget it's a game, and like we play video games, right? Because we can die. Yes, we can come back and start over again on those levels and stuff. But ultimately,
even Lord of the Rings, Boromir. There you go. One of the heroes.
He's just a DMPC. The DM, was jealous of Aragorn. So,
and other good adventure starts, good ways of kicking off adventures. I've seen people criticize UK4 When a Star Falls for the way it starts, and I think it's one of the best adventure starts out there. It uses a new monster that has sucked the memories out of a group of monks, and when the characters take on this alien creature, finally defeat it, they are bombarded with the memories of the monks, which then gives them all the seeds for the adventure. I think it's a great start. I've seen people review the adventure and say, "Oh, the start's rubbish." No, that's one of the best starts
what
I've come
adventure
across.
was that again?
UK4 When a Star Falls. What I did when I started is I printed out all the memories, and I stood up at the table and hurled them, these balls of paper with the memories on, at my players, just throwing them across the table, and they were picking them up off the floor and opening them up and reading them, and it was great fun. That to me is a good start. I'm trying to think of other. Going through various modules in my head in terms of
it's not a D&D module, but one of the absolute worst starts to a module is the Star Frontiers module, the very first one that comes with the game, where they have you make your character buy all of your equipment and then crash you on a planet with all of it lost.
Yep.
Crash on Volturnus. Right. Yeah, it's like the worst. It's made even worse because it is the first adventure that anybody who buys that box set is going to play, because it's the one that comes with it. So it's just like, why are you doing this? There's not an equipment save. There's nothing. It's just like, no matter what you had on your character, it's gone.
I mean, I don't mind that generally as a start, but if it makes you specifically buy the stuff, then take it away and say, okay, that's just being a jerk.
Yeah, because character generation is separate from that adventure. It's just like, they're like, because it's all kind of, here's the rules. It even goes through and has like a set of basic rules and then the advanced rules in the box set, 2 separate booklets to help kind of walk you through, and your character can kind of go evolve from the one to the next. And then you go on this first adventure, which is going to be the natural progression for anybody who picks up that box set. And they're like, all that stuff, it's gone. It's like, and you're on a desert planet where
my very first character in that was one of the simian race. I don't remember what they were.
Azerians, the berserker flying monkeys that got turned into the Hadozi for Spelljammer.
But he had a 0 strength because it was you rolled percentages for everything, but you took 5 off. Their max was 95. I rolled a 0.5, took off 5. I had a 0 strength.
So your Azerian is in there in like arm and leg braces. And no,
so I got to re-roll that.
Sorry, but yeah, like I said, I haven't played a lot of D&D modules, but I have played the Volturnus series, and that stands out hands down. Don't do this to your players, period. And if you're going to, then don't let them know. Like, look, don't equip your characters.
We've not mentioned it yet for great starts, but I have to say every single paranoia scenario has a perfect start.
I've never played it.
Every single paranoia scenario starts in pretty much the same way. Troubleshooters, please come and report to the briefing office. Here's a load of experimental equipment. sign for it, please. Make sure you use it, and here's your mission. Now that bit that will tend to take about half an hour. If there's any protestations, there tends to be infighting. You'll end up with 1 or 2 characters dead in that half an hour, and that's exactly what paranoia should be. and they're going to protest because the players know that this experimental equipment will blow up in their faces, but they can't say no. They're not allowed to say no. They have to use it. They have to, with a big smile on their face, they have to accept it. And you just know there's going to be absolute carnage. And if you've not played the game, do you know the basic premise of the game?
I don't.
You don't? Right. It's a complete Mickey take of every sci-fi trope you've ever heard. It's designed to be very silly. It's got a little bit of a darkness to it, but it's comic.
I think it really stems out of stuff like The Prisoner and Logan's Run and stuff like that. So
I know it was advertised heavily in Dragon magazine, so I'd see a lot of stuff for it, but it was just one.
Imagine a 1984 type scenario. You're all in this dome called Alpha Complex. You've all been bred from test tubes. Anything to do with human reproduction is off limits, outlawed. You don't know anything about it. You live
so it's THX.
You live on little food pills and basic sludge, and you are happy because Big Brother is the computer. The computer runs Alpha Complex. The computer is completely insane. You know that as a player, but you can't admit to it. The computer is absolutely tyrannical. All it cares about is imposing its own power. In this world, there's an utterly rigid structure based on your security clearance. Now, the reason it's called paranoia is every PC has 6 clones. If one of your clones dies, your next clone just walks in. It's a world where traitors get executed on the spot. If you have any evidence that somebody is a traitor, you must kill them on the spot. That includes all the other player characters. It is illegal, traitorous, to have a mutant power. Everybody in the party has a mutant power. It is illegal to be a member of a secret society. Everybody in the party is a member of a secret society. Usually, if the DM is doing their job right, conflicting secret societies with different ideals and different purposes for the adventure. If you reveal your mutant power, if you reveal you're a member of a secret society, everyone else in the party will clamor to execute you on the spot. And one character in the party will be a member of special services, the internal security force, who are there to specifically try and root out traitors. But you don't know which member of the party is a member of internal security. Hence paranoia.
Okay.
And it just encourages crazy player versus player action the whole time. And that's why I said during the mission briefing, more often than not, characters will start dying. Most players will be on the 2nd or 3rd clone by the time they finish the mission briefing, because they'll start bickering. You're given experimental equipment that you know is going to blow up on your face. It's going to you'll have anti-gravity boots that you know will go out of control, or an exoskeleton that will go berserk and have you smashing up Alpha Complex and thus be charged with treason for breaking the computer's equipment. But because you've signed the form at the start, you're responsible for it. The whole point, you've got a mission, but your chance of completing the mission is pretty much next to 0. If you get halfway through the mission, your players have done really well. It usually just descends into absolute anarchy and carnage in no time at all, and it's a lot of fun.
Now, I'm trying to remember what other first level modules there were in D&D, that whether or not they had a good background. Second edition had Border Watch. I remember we went through that. I went through as a player, and we were all veterans of the IU's war. that happened to be in the same unit, so we all took on this assignment together. In Search of the Unknown B1, I have that, but I don't think I ever went through it.
There's no real opening in that one. It's just the dungeon there. There's no.
Okay.
Yes. Well, there is the thing that the two people who live in the dungeon are meant to be heroes, and they disappeared. So you go into the dungeon.
But there's no Shanghaiing the players. It's just dungeons laid out and can be inserted anywhere. There's no scenario that kicks you off.
No. It's a teaching module, isn't it? In terms of just stocking a dungeon and exploring, and it was the first adventure for a lot of people, and introduced a lot of the standard sort of dungeon tropes. And for that reason, a lot of people have cut their teeth with it and have fond feelings about it. Looking back at it, it was nothing special, but it did its job. It did its job very well. It introduced people to D&D. Yeah.
It works well. I mean, especially even as a DM, if you know what you're doing, it works for new players. Yeah. It's not going to overwhelm them.
Yes, Slan. Yes, one we haven't mentioned.
Veiled Society.
This one's Veiled Society is a very different adventure, and I rather like it. I've never DM'd it. I've only tried it a few times as a player, and I was going to DM it for my group. But remember that player I mentioned earlier who bought a few old school adventures? This is one of the ones he's bought. He's bought the Isle of Dread. He's bought the Veiled Society, and for a joke, he bought the Forest Oracle.
But I have a mission now. I'm going to retool Forest Oracle, and I'm going to put that into my campaign.
Yeah.
Right now they don't know, but the big bad guy they're going to face is a red slod or Slade-O, whichever way you pronounce it, that is controlling the giant walking sticks that are controlling the giant ants. But yeah, I'm gonna have to put in Forest Oracle.
get the druids on site. That's the idea.
Well, in the Eastwood, which they haven't gotten to yet, there are actually 4 dryads that are taking care of these woods. So I'm sure I could fit it in there somehow. Of course, they are spring, summer, autumn, and winter are the 4 dryads.
So how are you going to approach that famous lake and the nymph and the sleeping man?
I don't remember enough of the module to know. I just know that I can reskin it. I know I can.
One of the worst encounters ever.
Yeah.
Oh God, that encounter is dreadful.
She implores you to take the potion to release the sleeping man from the effects of the lake. It's like, why don't you do it yourself? Immediately, players get suspicious, right?
Well, the hook with the dryads was going to be winter is getting to the point where she's about ready to die. So every 200 years, the oldest one passes on, and the next one moves up and basically does a name change, and a new one has to be born. So maybe whoever it is that gets freed from this is going to be the being that can impregnate the dryad to make a new one.
Guess how you wake up the sleeping man though in the adventure?
Oh, I don't even want to know.
You shake him.
Yeah.
And he wakes up. But that's how strong the enchantment is.
I'm hearing AC/DC in my head. You shook me all night long.
It's supposed to be an enchantment that she's desperate because she can't wake him. All she had to do was shake him.
Maybe it's just a lie. It's all a setup. There is no enchantment. He's just asleep.
Or pour the enchantment, or kill the enchantment by pouring the potion that she's carrying in the lake that she's standing next to. Yes, what a great encounter that is.
Yeah, he's probably just some kind of gas spore. When you shake him, he blows up in TPK.
It's like one of the encounter in Isle of Dread where you run into the guy in the middle of the jungle who's like, "Oh, you need to take me to this place to be buried because I'm gonna die for sure." But you're in a world with healing magic.
Yeah. Someone will always step in and say, "I'll try and heal him."
What's he gonna do? Like, no, don't heal me! Don't heal me! I want to die.
It always feels a bit. I mean, I have there's a few modules I've found with that sort of encounter, and there's a guy who's been badly tortured in U3, the final enemy. And it specifically says in there that he's beyond regular healing spells to try and get around players doing that.
So what? He's like on the edge of death, and you actually need a resurrection, raise dead.
Yeah, it does. It says something like a heal spell, which is way beyond the level, the character levels.
Those movies and TV shows where you manage to conveniently show up within his last 2 sentences of life.
Yes.
Maybe they hit him with a sword of wounding. That can't be healed with magic.
Well, you could say that. Yeah.
Maybe he's
suffering
suffering
put a
from
sort
that.
of wounding in there for them to find.
Maybe you're getting him after one of those insta kill attacks. After a T-Rex stomps on you, you're probably not going to be too close to saving.
That's one thing that disappointed me in the Isle of Dread is there wasn't a proper T-Rex encounter. Was there? It was on a random day,
wasn't there?
There were definitely dinosaurs.
Yeah, there was an Allosaurus.
Yeah.
I still think that Tomb of Annihilation has a great encounter with the undead T-Rex that vomits up zombies from the animated corpses of the people it's eaten. Like, that's a great encounter. Not to mention the miniature is awesome. So
I bet.
We the Jungles of Chult, the Forgotten Realms module. We went through that because it came out right around the same time as the first Jurassic Park movie. So we went to that as a dinosaur hunt. We screwed up the teleporter between the frost giants and the fire giants, and it sent us there instead of to the fire giants. So we had to, well, basically we had to find a pylon of the things that were masquerading as slee stacks, and that got us back to teleporting to the fire giants like it was supposed to.
Tomb of Annihilation is clearly the love child of Isle of Dread and Tomb of Horrors, though. If you look at the way that module is put together, it's got a giant blank map that the players get to fill in as they travel it. It's got a little bit more key locations, with some populace, but, and then it ultimately ends with delving a dungeon built by a Sararak. It's designed to be a properly fit into your actual campaign encounter with a Sararak in one of his deadly tombs. That's not like just, taking a piss on your players because you're mad as a DM like Gygax was with Tomb of Horrors.
It's one of the few 5th edition products that pretty much everybody has turned around and said this one's good.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with a city that has dinosaur racing too.
Well, that goes. Yeah. I did throw a few dinosaurs in one of my recent campaigns. It felt a little bit out of place, and I sort of forgot about them afterwards. But I had planned to put a few more in, but never really pulled off a Lost World one properly.
Yeah, there's I never understood the contention with a lot of players and DMs about dinosaurs in D&D. Why not? Considering they're so much a part of the source fiction that early D&D was based around, giant lizards and dinosaurs in Lost Worlds and stuff like that.
Valley of Flangy.
It really depends on what you're going for. If somebody's going for something grounded in medieval, then you're not going to have dinosaurs. But as you say, Lost World scenarios, go nuts.
Yeah.
Adventure intros that feel forced but do work. UK 5, Eye of the Serpent. Have you ever played that one?
No.
It's for a small party of first level characters, and basically what happens is the characters are picked up by a rock that is hunting for food for its soon to hatch babies, and they're all dropped in a nest.
Oh yeah, I've heard. I think it was you that heard the review on that. That's interesting.
And they've got to band together to get out the nest and escape down the mountainside to avoid being the rock's dinner, or the rock's baby's dinner. And I've seen people criticize that one. I quite like that as a start. It's
very Sinbad.
You can drop it anywhere, it's a good excuse for your characters to get to know each other and force them to work together, and it just it's a decent little adventure to kick off a campaign with. And I just then put the village of Homlet a few miles away from the mountain, so they wander into the village.
Well, if you think about it, it's a really good reskinning of the you've been captured and imprisoned.
Yes,
You know, it's the same sort of a start. You're just changing the captor and the prison. It's an environmental prison rather than an actual structure.
You get out the nest, you find yourself you're at the top of a mountain, and it's like, okay, there is a way down the mountain, but it's a bit treacherous and it's quite long.
It wasn't a start of mine, but somebody had talked about it in running one of their campaigns. One of my friends or something. Basically, the campaign starts where the party thinks they're going to have to fight a dragon. Like, you know, they're all first level. Big ass dragon shows up, and they're like terrified. But basically, then the building they're in gets collapsed on top of them, and the actual start for them is to try and find their way out of the collapsed building. And they never actually have to face the dragon, but it's a fun start. Again, trying to get to know the players. Kind of introduces the player characters, and then they have to get out of they have to find their way out, so they have to work together. It's another variation on that.
Two that I own, I've never played, and I've never even really heard a good review of them. The World of Greyhawk ones, Puppets and Gargoyles.
Oh. The gargoyle is the one with the gargoyle that's had its wings clipped, isn't it?
I think so. I read through them when I first got them, and it's like, yeah, I can see why they got the reviews they did, but I own them now, so that was my goal, to have the complete collection.
Yes, and Malachi's exactly right here. Moldvay's inspiration is blatantly obvious in the adventures that he creates. Well, the Lost City, the Isle of Dread, and Castle Amber.
Love Castle Amber.
3 absolute classics, and obviously inspired by things you find in Appendix N. All of them.
Well, and just like, Zeb Cook has an obsession with flying monkeys, but seeing as he wrote Star Frontiers, also he helped work on Star Frontiers and Flying Monkeys, and then he also has the Phanatons in Isle of Dread. And
yep.
Was Isle of Dread a collaboration between Moldvay and Cook? It was, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it was. But then
I do
Moldvay
not have it standing here next to me, so.
But yes, Moldvay did the rewrite of B3, but that was a bit unfortunate because I don't think he had great material to work with that one. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, Biff says here, like the start of Eye of the Serpent, use it as my group is wandering around the sandbox to find an adventure and thrust one upon them. Yeah, it's one thing that's really nice about it. So many of those adventures early on were for parties of 6 to 10, and I had a group of 3 or 4 players when I was playing when I was a kid, and none of them were interested in hirelings and henchmen and that sort of stuff. They just wanted to play their characters. And Eye of the Serpent is designed for 4 level 1 characters. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Yes, Gargoyle has got dreadful cover art. It didn't make it into my video because it was 2nd edition. I didn't go and do any 2nd edition stuff. But Gargoyle, yeah, it's absolutely abysmal. It would have made it in, and I think Puppets would have made it in as well. That's appalling. Yeah, yes. Well, anyway, we've taken it up to midnight, haven't we?
It's only 7 o'clock for us here,
right?
It's 6 o'clock for me, so.
Yeah, well, all your clocks are wrong. All your clocks are wrong.
Sorry, I can't control the speed at which the planet revolves, but
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true. You can control the fact that you live in the wrong country. But anyhow,
My ancestors were trying to escape you Brits. So
yeah, and then we fought a war.
Yeah, half mine were trying.
A couple of them.
The other half met them at the shore when they landed. So,
I mean, really, my direct ancestors were coming over from Holland and Germany. So,
right. Oh, so you've got European in you.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna call it now. I think because, as always, I have work on a Thursday. I never get Thursdays off or Fridays, which is a shame. But I'm just going to say before we close up, if anyone is free this weekend, I am planning on running a Call of Cthulhu scenario set during the French Revolution. So if you want to listen to me speaking in terrible franglais throughout most of it, and having lots of I don't know, late 18th century debauchery and sort of horrific killings and that sort of stuff, then yeah, you're more than welcome to join in. All the sign-in stuff's on the Discord channel if you want to play. It is starting at 2 p.m. my time, which is early in the morning in America. I picked that because it gave a possibility for people who live in Eastern time zones beyond, as in going towards sort of Australia and New Zealand even, give them a chance to play. But hasn't the one particular player who has played before from that time zone isn't available, unfortunately. But you are more than welcome to sign up and join in. 3 characters have been taken so far. Well, three players have signed up. There are 3 more spaces. It's ideally for 4 to 6, so ideally at least 1 more. But if you want to join, you're more than, yeah, as I say, welcome to join in. But until then, and until next week, well, till Friday, because I'm going to be doing we're going to be doing House of Hell, hopefully one last time on Friday. Hopefully we're going to finish it. Crossing my fingers, make some good decisions.
the best we've done so far is with the hopeless character.
Yeah, exactly. But that's almost needed, that type of character, one that couldn't survive, just for people to try things out and start exploring properly.
That's a good lesson for any role-playing game, though. The character you think is hopeless is the one you're probably going to do the best with.
Yeah.
I love playing characters that are imperfect and suboptimal.
This was a fighting fantasy character with 8 skill and 15 stamina, which is very low. And you don't start with a weapon, so your skill drops to 5, which means you're getting beaten up by everything. That poor character had no chance when the fights kicked off. But at least he discovered a lot further into the house than all our better characters had got before. I think this is attempt number 5 we're going to be doing. So let's see.
We were always afraid to open the doors that had the devil's names on them because we didn't know what was in it. Now we're finding each one of them has an item that makes us that much better.
Yeah.
Until the one that doesn't.
Don't open the closet with a dead guy in it. We got to remember that.
It's all a setup.
Well, it's because the first time we went through it, we opened the first door we came to, and it contained a vampire, killed us.
Yeah,
and everyone's been like, "Oh, don't go into those rooms. Lots of things will kill us." But you've got to go in some of them. Anyhow, I'm going to draw it to a close and head off to Betty Buys because it is gone midnight here. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. To Saxius for suggesting the topic and being with us for about an hour and a half. Sean's been with us. Major's Musings has been with us from the beginning. Elfbait forgot the time and joined us 10 minutes in. And Halakar's joined us later on. Thank you, chaps. Do you want to shield your channels, anybody? I know at least.
Come watch puppets. Come watch the puppets.
Make some more videos.
Yeah, they're coming. It's a busy week, So
Sean is a amazing poopenspieler.
He is indeed. He is
It's a
indeed.
German word for puppet player.
That's a great word. It's a great word. Poopenspiel.
Oh, it's like in a language full of harsh words to hear them like Puppenspieler.
I'm a very good poop and shitter.
I have to say, I mean, one of my favourite words in the English language is the word crapulous. It's a great sounding word. If you're feeling crapulous, it simply means you've got a hangover caused by too much rich food and high living. And what do you do when you've got a hangover? Yeah, you go to the bog. So thus crapulous is perfect. But it's a genuine word. And it's not the source of the word crap anyway. But anyhow, thank you everybody everyone for taking part. Thank you everybody in chat as always. Some good stuff, and see you Friday. If you don't see you Friday, we'll see you next week.
All right.
Cheers all.
Good night, everybody.
Later, folks.
Ta-ra.
Good night, everyone.